Well, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Megan Peterson. I'm actually from Crookston originally. I don't currently reside here, but I want to take you down a little bit of a memory lane for myself briefly. A few years ago, when I was an undergrad, just a few years ago, I remember right after the semester ended, I met with a few of my friends who were not from the area and asked them what they'd be doing for the next few weeks. And I remember my reaction so vividly because they said, probably gonna be bored out of our minds. And I remember thinking, boredom, what is that? I've not honestly ever experienced that in my lifetime. But in the very next minute, I remember thinking, wow, their experience here is so different than mine, right? I have access to information and people and resources that they clearly did not have access to or didn't know where to find. And so their boredom was because they didn't know what was around. And I remember saying, oh, well, call me. We'll go to Red Lake Falls and go tubing the Red, or we'll go to Fertile and hike the sandhills, or we'll, I gave them a bunch of things, and they were like, what? How did we not know these things existed in the area? Now, fast forward a few more years, I remember moving to Fargo and then Kentucky and kind of having similar experiences. While I didn't ever experience boredom, I do remember feeling a little bit uneasy, unwelcomed, not knowing how things worked, where to find certain information, especially as a single female living 1,500 miles from home. My experience kind of emulated probably how they felt a little bit in those moments. And it's then that I realized, our experiences in communities vary based off of our perceptions, based off of our access to information, based off of our resources. And fast forward a few more years later now, for the last decade or so, I've been studying human behavior and communication through my Master's of Science in Organizational Communication. And I've realized that we really have a passive communication model, kind of this like build it and they'll come, hopefully, approach, right? And now, granted, I just sat here and listened to almost every one of you give accolades to your community members for a number of great events that were put on recently, and that's awesome. But we all also know that there are some events where our community members work incredibly hard to put forth the effort to create an event. Our business owners put forth, effort to create an event. The library, right? I can go on and on of different places who put themselves out there, put resources into things, and then hope that people will come. Now, things have changed over the years with technology, and things have changed incredibly with COVID. People aren't walking in the grocery store as much as they used to see the flyers on the wall. They are not frequenting the insides of a lot of buildings, really, right? And when they do, we got our masks on and we kind of just hunker down and go. It's changed. This passive communication strategy has to change, okay? So it is with a lot of excitement that tonight I will tell you that my communications solution-based business consulting firm Vocal Fuel is launching a mobile app. And this mobile app is really the solution to some of the issues that I just mentioned, okay? This is something that really puts forth the end user experience. It marries municipalities and city government with chambers, with businesses, with colleges, and really puts the end user, which is in this case the constituents, right, the citizens of Crookston. But it doesn't stop there because that honestly would just be kind of phase one. We don't often think about the passerbys who are coming into our community through happenstance, whether they're driving through for the day and, want to stop at 2nd Street Boutique. Didn't know that was right downtown, right? Maybe that wasn't on their plan, but then they potentially could if they had this app. You don't know who's filling your hotels, your vacation rentals, right? There's a whole group of people who pass through your community that you don't necessarily have access to, and they don't have access to all the cool things that you just mentioned that they could partake in. And that really gives them a different welcoming experience in terms of what cities have to offer. Maybe they would like to live here. Maybe they would feel welcomed. Maybe they would stay, right? This doesn't even address what it feels like to be the new person in town and to not know where to get city information from, We do know that the city website is currently being looked at, being renovated, right? But the more accessible that information is to all new people, all current citizens, the better it is going to be for everybody. So this is really a strategic, personalized experience. When people open this app, they are going to be asked to create a personalized plan. This is not an intention of over inundating people with, you know, here, look here, look here, look here kind of thing. What would be on my app is probably going to be very different than what you all would like to see personalized. It can include push notifications from the city government, from local schools, emergency notifications, things like that. The constituents can let the city government know if they experience potholes, or you can let them know if they need to move cars on a certain side of a street based off of snow removal, right? There is a two-way communication approach. So this is really focusing on solving a problem. There are breakdowns in communication, there's inefficiencies, there are gaps, and there are overlaps where sometimes I think people aren't quite sure as the end user where their information comes from, but they don't really care. They just want the information, they just want a better experience. And sometimes the lines are drawn so hard between what municipalities do, what chambers do, what businesses do, but at the end of the day, the end user wants a different experience. And so what's always been done isn't necessarily the best way, right? And this is a new approach. So this would allow us to not just focus on Crookston. This type of app would build the community even larger. I live in rural Fertile. I identify as a Fertile resident according to my zip code, but I work in Crookston. There's a lot of people in Minnesota that are like me, where they work in one community, live in the next, they live rurally, they would gladly travel 30 to 60 miles to partake in, you know, interesting events that suit them. So when you create your login, you have the opportunity to create personalized preferences in terms of what you'd like to experience on the app, what type of notifications you'd like from your local government, what type of events you'd like to be given for push notifications, things like that. And this will solve really a long-standing breakdown of communication. So again, personalized to the nth degree, whatever sparks each person's passion. And I think that's a really important aspect of the user experience within communities itself. So what would this do? It's gonna hopefully increase community engagement, get more people to events, get more people into businesses. Businesses will have the opportunity to let people know what's going on. With COVID, all sorts of new things have come up, right? Like you wanna go out to eat. Oh, that restaurant is closed all of a sudden, right? You didn't know that prior to. We kind of have this passive communication thing where a lot of things are on Facebook. There's a ton of Facebook pages, and that's a great service. I'm not knocking Facebook. Obviously, I use it a bunch too. But you still have to go out and look for all of that information. And whether or not you see it is another thing, right? There was just an event in outside of Fertile a few weeks ago that looked like a great event, outdoor music, outdoor food vendors, outdoor food trucks, outdoor vendors, and it looked like it was a lot of fun. I texted 4 people after the fact to see how it went, and nobody knew about it, right? Looked super cool. That's exactly what we want more people, even if they're not from Crookston, to participate in events that all of these people are working so hard to put on. It would increase community participation. There would be a community calendar section allowing people to put in events, and simultaneously the person putting in that event would be able to create a needs-based volunteer ticket. So for anybody who wants to volunteer, there would be that solution where all of a sudden there is a plethora of options for people to volunteer and a very clear communication in terms of what the needs are for that event. And I think that's really important because one thing that I guess I personally don't do in my job, but I know my sister does a lot of it, is a lot of coordinating of volunteers. And there are actually times she struggles finding volunteer events for her volunteers, believe it or not. Whether it's timing or finding out about something too late or what have you, right? And trying to find the right people. Sometimes it just is a little bit more difficult than we'd hope it would be. Higher community satisfaction. Okay. Hopefully this would make people feel more welcomed, more on board, maybe you get more people to, show up to meetings. If they, you'd be able to put City Hall minutes and different information on there as well. Streamline communication, again, that two-way notification, the two-way communication I think is really important between especially city government and the citizens. And then really more cohesion amongst communities, not just Crookston again, but imagine just kind of casting a wider net. And I think that's really an important thing to really start thinking about in terms of how different our lives could be if instead of we focused on competition with other communities, we started focusing on collaborating with other communities. So what does this look like? This is the prototype. It would be personalized with local pictures. That would be based off of what each community wanted. Events. You could choose like Crookston, obviously we have like the Sugar Butte Museum that was just brought up tonight. There could be landmarks in the area, fun facts about those things. One thing that I teach at the University of Minnesota Crookston, and one thing I'm always reminded myself of is to never assume knowledge, right? Once we've lived in a community for so long, or once we've done something for so long, we kind of forget that we didn't know that information at one time. And I think it's really important, again, from the end user experience, to remember that people who are new to the community, people who have not been involved before, it's nerve-wracking to go out and try to learn some of these new things. So they don't even know it exists in the first place. So this would be an opportunity for the community to really personalize some of those great things we already have in place. Our outdoor spaces and things that I think are hidden gems right amongst our own community members sometimes. And again, you can kind of see down in the right in this area, there will be, on the homepage, kind of a basis of navigation for each person, but what is actually showing up kind of on their feed is going to be personalized to each end user's particular requested experience, which is very different than what a lot of apps currently allow, which makes this one really exciting. The project timeline for this, we're actually underway. It's a 3-phase project. We just finished the first phase today. Pretty exciting stuff. So the finality of this is looking right in January. January 24th, might actually be before then. And the cost is something that obviously people are going to have a question on. We're looking at 2-year contracts. For city buy-in, looking at the initial buy-in, a one-time $10,000 fee for personalized community app. That would be accompanied with $125 per month or $1,500 per year, same thing. It would be prorated from the date of launch, so if by chance it was not ready in January, obviously we wouldn't be charging for January. One thing I want to mention here is it was really important for me to pitch this tonight, kind of in the place it started for me, and where all of this kind of came to fruition for me. So if this is something that the city of Crookston is interested in and could commit to it in this year, I would actually take $1,500 off to make it $8,500 for the city of Crookston for that buy-in fee. So the next steps are really focusing on discussion. If you have any questions, making a decision at some point, potentially signing a contract, and then really waiting for the completion of the app, and then there would be training and implementation, both through Vocal Fuel, my company, and the app developers. Amy.
Ways and Means Committee members. Some of that was kind of really hard for me to listen to because other than Wyatt in this room, I'm the new guy, and moving to Crookston and not knowing anyone except the people that I showed up at City Hall with and then elected officials was a very lonely time for me at the beginning. COVID did not help that because there weren't a lot of events going on, but I do think there is, I don't think it's on purpose, assumed knowledge here. I actually did not know about the chief's 911 ceremony until afterwards. And I don't believe anyone intentionally didn't say anything to me, but I want to be at those things. But it's really difficult here to know where to find that information, and also as a new person or even as a visitor to feel like you're weaseling your way into groups. I'm not the type that's probably gonna say, hey, oh, you're going out with, you have 5 people going, can I come? So it's just, to me, a lot of that was personal and kind of touching about what Megan just shared with us. And as we move forward tonight in talking about budgets, I do want to say to you, if this is something that's important to you, the community calendar has come up multiple times. We actually talked about it at our strategic planning session. Steve, I know that it's something that's really important to you. If this is something that the council would like to move forward with, I believe that I can commit to you that we can find room in the budget for that in the 2022 calendar year. I think personally, it would be really nice. I think there are community members that would use it. I think it's also a way to hopefully start to bring some of our UMC students and integrate them more with our community and what's going on here. That's also been something that's come up in multiple conversations with various groups. So I think it's a wonderful idea. I think it's something that fits nicely with our goals to attract people to our community, to get them to stay here, to bring their families here, to feel welcome here, to integrate our university with our community. So if it's something that's important to you, I think I can commit to you that we can make room for that in the budget while still meeting the priorities that you'll be giving staff for direction tonight.
Megan, I have a question.
Absolutely, Todd.
Have you been in contact with the chamber and the downtown committee and the
Your microphone's off.
Crookston Visitors Bureau? Those
Have I
three?
ever been in contact with them, or have been in
Have you
contact
been in
with them about this
contact
app?
With them about this?
I have not.
Okay, that would be good.
I have a number of people I plan to, address this with, but as of right now, I plan to start
Okay,
here.
very good.
Yep, and one thing I do want to mention, and this is, going to be city by city based, right? Crookston has obviously a very active city hall. They have an active chamber. They have the University of Minnesota Crookston. There are multiple entities that put on a lot of events, put out a lot of information that are really integral to the local economy. But I'm also aware that like Fertile, for instance, has a mayor and does not have a city council and does not have a chamber, right? So each city's experience in terms of their needs might vary a little bit. So for that reason, as the owner of the app, I am okay with, if there wanted to be a marriage between, the powers that be that I just listed, where the college wanted to pitch in, or the city hall, or I'm sorry, the chamber wanted to pitch in, that would be totally fine if it was, a cohesive plan in place. And for that, yeah, I would definitely I'm looking forward to having a conversation with the chamber as well. But my initial target is city governments and municipalities on face value, just because I think that communication from the city government is a really important part to the constituents.
And I think the city's in a really great position to be a leader in something like that, and what a great opportunity to bring people together, to partner and to contribute in whatever that might look like in the end, whether that's monetarily or whether it's with their information or pulling from their website. I think it's a wonderful way to bring in information from all of those groups for our community members, visitors, people that want to visit here. I can see a lot of opportunities with that, with our various groups and organizations here.
Who keeps us all updated?
So some of that is going to pull from like Google, right, or what's currently on if you Google Crookston businesses, for instance, right? Some of that can be populated automatically. Some of it is going to need to be like double checked, maybe auto-populated, and then especially with COVID, right? Some businesses are still you're still online, but not actually active. There would be administrators that would have access to that kind of removal and cleanup opportunity. As of right now, and again, my goal with this is really, personalization, even for the, city's experience. It's to make it as easy as possible. I firmly believe good communication is streamlined, it's easy. But I think it's important that like the community calendar would have there's, for instance, I'm from the area, we have a lot of churches who put on events, right? They're not part of any of the things I just mentioned in terms of university, chamber, city, but they still put on and serve a huge population of people in our community. And that's important that people know what their events are too. So the community calendar would have, as of right now, the plan would be quite a few administrators. There might be ultimately, depending on what the preference is of whoever purchases the app, that they would potentially have the authority, like final authority of approving things, or if they want, 15 or 20 people to just be able to edit, that's an option. Yeah. And then as far as push notifications from the local government, that's something that would have to be determined amongst the city hall staff. Any other questions?
Megan,
You're saying that if we wanted to, you could talk to the chamber and them and say for a dollar amount that they could buy in on our app or whatever.
Yes.
But then we would still be the ones that were responsible for changing it and updating it?
That's going to depend on your preferences. In terms of the business directory, that might be something that you want them to take care of, to share the responsibility and share monetarily. In terms of structure, that's the nice thing, especially being an early buy-in. The first approximately 10 or so cities that I pitch us to that sign contracts are going to be what I call my pilot group. And really, I will be able to have my app developers make this, the best experience for those 10, based off what those 10 cities want in particular. So I think it's nice because we could be able to listen to feedback in terms of what you want and develop it accordingly.
Go ahead.
I think that was Christy.
Go ahead, Christy.
So I have a couple things. I really like the idea. It's exciting. I think no matter what we have, whether it's a Facebook page or a community calendar or whatever you want to say, I think one of the biggest challenges is just having somebody update it. And I think that's a conversation that the city and whoever other partnering individuals for this are going to be, is somebody making the commitment to continuously do that. Because I think you could have any avenue in which, even if it's somehow centralized, but if people aren't utilizing it, then it doesn't make a ton of sense, and it does kind of defeat the purpose of such a thing. So I think that there would need to be a lot of community buy-in for this really to, I think, work well. And I'm sure, Megan, that's something that you can help develop strategy on. Also knowing that this is a brand new app and having worked with a lot of different apps recently in some fields that are similar to this, there's always bugs. And I think that sometimes when we as developers or creators think that things are intuitive, they aren't always intuitive. And so will you guys within the first year really be kind of looking for that feedback or focus groups that can really make sure that even if you maybe initially designed it one way, if it's being used differently or it isn't as intuitive to the community, are you guys willing to kind of take a look at that and retool the initial app?
Yes.
And then my last question, sorry, just real quick, was is this going to have some type of desktop component? Because I just want to make sure we're not just automatically assuming that everybody has a smartphone or a smart tablet to be able to access this information.
Christy, can you repeat the last question? I didn't hear what you, there was
Sorry.
one phrase in there I couldn't hear.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was just wondering if there's some type of desktop component to this, just because of accessibility for those who might not have a smartphone or some type of tablet to access this information.
Yes, so good questions and comments. Yes, in terms of retooling it and, really taking a strategic look at, how things were initially set up versus how they're actually functioning or how people want them to function, 100%. The reason I chose the particular app development company that I did is because their focus is really on that. And they continue to remind me kind of along the way, maybe what my ideas are and what other people's ideas are might be, a little bit different, which I really like. So yes, particularly again, the first 10 cities is what we're looking right now at being our pilot, what we call kind of our pilot or our leadership group. They'll get special focus in terms of getting a lot of feedback, giving a lot of feedback, focus groups, figuring out, how many users are using it in their area, what do those demographics look like, where are people focusing when they do go on the app, all of those types of things. So yes, absolutely, if it needs to be retooled, it's going to be retooled. That's, the ultimate measure of success is making sure that people are using it, enjoying it, making, make sense to them, that it's increasing all of the things, all of the engagement factors that I had originally listed. It's not just about creating an app and just, downloading it and calling it good. To me, that wouldn't be a win. That's not a success. So the ultimate is to increase engagement, and whatever it takes to do that is what the plan is. So that's a good question. In terms of the third one was desktop. Yes, as of right now, there will be a desktop version. While we don't anticipate quite as many people using it that way, there will be, and some of the features might be obviously a little bit limited just because with a mobile app, you have GPS technology, things that can kind of, you're in this area, setting geographic region preferences. Like I had mentioned earlier, for me, my user preference might be 60 miles from my house. That wouldn't be abnormal for me to want to attend an event within 60 miles. The online desktop version, wouldn't give quite the exact same experience, but in terms of access to the information, a lot of the nuts and bolts that are really important, Christy, yes, that would be accessible on the desktop version.
Megan, how would you see this connecting with our informational person in the city? Our city have an informational activity that we're actually changing and moving forward also on this kind of activity.
Dawn,
Giving out information.
do you mind if I respond, and then I'll see if Megan wants to add. Megan and I have actually had some discussions about that, and my idea is, one, every department head here has information that they either need or want to share out. And we've discussed the ability then to set certain permissions where they can create. I like to see what's going out before it's published. One, I like to know. I don't want someone to ask me on the street and not know. But being able to let multiple people submit and have kind of a final review and a post out. Even within the city, I think allowing multiple employees to do that, and then the library and your chamber representatives, and being able to really pull people in. I would like to share more on our Facebook page, but because I do that, sometimes I just simply don't have as much time. So having multiple people being able to submit and create information to get out there, it can also pull things, I believe, from our website. Is that right, Megan?
Yes, especially that you're kind of in a beautiful time in terms of,
Yes.
Your website isn't just brand new redone. This is something that we
Yes.
can really pair together to make
We
sure that
can
it integrates with your new
move past
website.
our nightmare of a website right now, but envision a wonderful day ahead of us where we don't have broken links. And Chad has mentioned he's going to start like a website task force, if you will, and make sure that each department is weighing in on what relevant information will be there. So that will also help feed important information out on the app, and then putting some of that responsibility back on our department heads and then myself to get information out is what I would envision from a staff standpoint. Or if one of you has something from your ward that you would like to share, allowing those submissions too, so we can share those out as well I know many of you have Facebook pages, but that's another way to reach more people.
I also wonder if there's opportunity on this app for links to say, we're having issues with drainage in our area, or we're having issues, and that somehow that's possibly like linking to some type of form or something. I think that sometimes people feel that they don't know where to go for some of this information or to relay their concern or their need. And I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to utilize this app for that as well, so they can submit a work order or a request or something of that nature.
Yep, Christy, you may not have heard me say it earlier in my presentation, but I did mention that that would be part of the two-way communication approach with this app. And yes, things like potholes, or, you know, noticing crime, or, you know, any of the things that the number of probably phone calls that City Hall gets where people, don't necessarily know who to tell or what to say or where to put it. There would be that feature on this as well.
I really like this, you know, if you look at this as you know, really involving the CVB, the chamber, the organizations that are in town and up and running right now. I think they really need to be a big part of this, because it's redundant to some of the things you brought up that they actually should be doing or are doing, where I think it'd be, you know, doubling up on certain things without including them 100%. I mean, they're the ones that bring the events. They're the ones that, you know, are behind a lot of them, and or, you know, throughout the year. And I think it would be really important that we have all three of those entities for sure on board with this thing, because, you know, I don't want to step on their toes saying we're going to have a whole thing, you know, we don't need the chamber anymore. I could see that happening with going 100% on this. And I just think we really got to be on walk along the line of making sure everybody's on board with this. It's my opinion on that.
And I think that's good feedback, Steve. I do want to make sure you understand this is in no way trying to, you know, push out the chamber or being in place of anything else. Right now, there's just, you know, really studying communication over the last, you know, decade, and particularly, you know, using Crookston as a case study in the sense of working and kind of living in the community. There are a lot of gaps. There are a lot of inefficiencies. There are redundancies. Those are all things that are communication problems, and can easily be, there can easily be solutions for those things without, you know, pushing somebody out of the circle. It really does the opposite. Instead of kind of assuming that everybody's getting the information, even when there is redundancies. What's really interesting about redundancies is sometimes there's multiple, you know, people doing the same thing and still people not getting the information. And, you know, ultimately that is actually the problem, is that there's still that problem. Even when you have multiple people doing it, it's incredibly inefficient, right? So that is, you know, a lot of the preface for this is kind of looking at it and saying, how can we make everything run more streamlined? How can we make sure that more people are getting information? One thing that I noticed in some of the feedback from the city surveys was there was particularly people who didn't know that there were events going on. Some of it was related to like heritage type of events, or, you know, requests for certain things. And they're things that I know that either the University of Minnesota Crookston or Crookston itself has put on. And it kind of broke my heart thinking, well, shoot, here they're upset or, you know, feel like there's nothing here for them. And there is, and they didn't know about it. What a tragedy, you know? As somebody whose kids participate in some of the events in Crookston, particularly swimming, I can tell you, even with a master's degree, I couldn't figure out how to get my child signed up for swimming lessons on your website. You know, I'm gonna be real honest. It was a struggle. I had to text a friend and say, just send me the link. I don't have time for this. That is a problem because you want people using your services, right? I pay to put my child in swimming lessons. That's a good thing for the city of Crookston, and it's good that my child is learning how to swim. It's a win-win. But it's not good when it's so frustrating that I'm like, where's the next closest pool, right? That is the heart of what the problem is here, is that there are so many problems, and we just kind of, whatever is currently at our hands is what we're going with, but it's not solving all of the issues. So I think it's important to kind of look at it from, our own experiences and then talk to other people and see what their experiences are. How hard is it to sign up for Parks and Rec? How hard, are people showing up to library events? Do they even know? I can tell you, I just found out the other day you have book groups that I honestly would have been interested in. Had I known, when they started. Had no idea. And I do go to your Facebook page on occasion, and I do, it's not that I'm never there. So it's one of those things, again, because it's a passive communication tool, it's not anybody in particular's fault that there are passive communication options. It's just is the way our world is right now. So the intent with this is to really be able to provide a personalized user experience that changes it from passive to strategic.
I've been a huge proponent of this master calendar, starting from the school district to the city to the county, to have a group thing, somewhere to go where you have this stuff. And, we've talked about it for, going on year 2 just about, of trying to develop that. I know it's not an easy task by any means to get everybody on board, but to have that one place where you can go and the library can post their events, the county commissioners can post what they got going on, the school district can post what they have going on, so have a neutral site where, one and done, and then you can stream off to the other, individual websites as you go. But I think that's just such a need for this whole community is the part of having a master area where you go and, anybody can put on there what their event is, big or small, it doesn't matter.
Yep.
Because there's, a lot of people like the smaller events too, and it's one of those things that, like you said, where do you start to find that, whether it's on Facebook or whatever. But
Yeah.
I think that if this could be streamlined into that, where the county, school district, all these entities can get together and have, with a master calendar sort of thing, with events, and I think it'd be good for the city, the county, school district, everything to be able to do that. And not sure if that's where you're, kind of want to go with this,
Yep,
or.
it is.
Can I ask the question?
Absolutely.
Okay, you got it on there that you want a 2-year guarantee, right? It was,
The 2-year guarantee would be for the $1,500 per year.
right.
And part of that is really to protect both of us, because technology, number one, is ever changing, and number two, incredibly expensive to develop. If I lock you in at $125 a month, let's say for 2 years, then I'm not going to be all of a sudden going, you asked for all these extra features as a pilot group, and my app developers are going to charge me another 10 grand, and that's all of a sudden in your pocket. So it's really to protect both of us in terms of a 2-year contract.
Okay, but then what happens after 2 years if we decided, I don't think we really like that? Do you take away the app? I mean, does that just disappear? Or, I don't know how this all stuff goes,
Good question. So the buy-in, the original, the original 10,000, or if we're able to commit for the 2022 year, it'd be 8,500 is what I had pitched to you. So originally, that is to develop all of this for Crookston, right? The plugging all the information in, the personalization.
And then we would own that?
You technically own it, yes. But in terms of, like, let's say after 2 years, you decided to quit paying, right? We don't use it anymore. The updates and that kind of thing would not be happening anymore, if that makes sense. So the user fee of $1,500 per year would ensure that, because do you use a lot of apps on your phone, can I ask?
No.
Okay. The thing about technology is it changes at the speed of light. There are updates and upgrades and changes and integrations happening. I can tell you with my app developers, I've had numerous conversations about integrating other existing software that's already, whether it's from the website, which your website will need updates even after it's developed, right? It's just the way of the world. So those continual upgrades and updates, that would make it user-friendly. It's kind of like, I don't know what kind of phone you have, but I had an iPhone 5 for a hot minute. That was a long time ago. They kind of quit working after a certain point, right? Because they're not compatible anymore with what's currently, in development. So yes, I mean, technically you wouldn't just like, poof, it's gone, but would it potentially have to phase out if you quit paying? Yes.
Because, like, say you had somebody responsible for taking over that and putting in the information for everybody. And all of a sudden you're saying, well, why are we paying you when we got this guy we're paying to do that? what would keep us from not just canceling you out, is what I'm asking.
Yeah, that's a good question. First of all, I'm not the one going to be putting any input, any information in. The fee to me, the buy-in is for concept, creation, implementation. If in a year somebody decides to not update things and put things in anymore, that's not really on the developer anymore. That's on the user. So that's if you decide that you're, I don't foresee it being something that one person in particular can just say, we don't need this anymore, right? We're not going to use this anymore. Certainly, if people aren't downloading it, demographics are being shown that it's not being used. That's a different type of thing. It's going to kind of become obsolete on its own because it wasn't good. And then in that case, I failed Christy in terms of what her question was to me, which I have no intention of doing, Christy, just so you know. But that's really, again, why the two-year contract is in place. Let's see how it goes. Make sure that, because initial app development is costly, very costly. And that is really, I don't want to all of a sudden go, oh, you want all these extra things, I want to deliver. And oh, by the way, you're going to have to go back to budgeting and figure out if you can get me another 10 grand. That's not my goal.
So that question you had there, I mean, does any smartphone is going to work on this? for the
It'll be
next 2
Android and
years?
Apple compatible.
Both?
Yes.
iPhone 6.
I hate to tell you, but you probably don't have too much longer with that thing.
You just got
For
it.
what I use it for?
And you said, like, say with the cost of this thing, if we wanted to try and marriage with some of the other groups in town, we could do that?
Absolutely. Yep. In terms of, to be totally blunt, in terms of who pays the bill, I don't really care. Again, if my focus is on the end user experience and really providing people a different experience than what they're currently getting in communities. And I can't care who pays for it and all of the powers in terms of that. It
I
doesn't.
think if we could get some more people vested in it, they'd be more apt to put all their information in it, rather than,
Absolutely.
But I think it has to probably start with us. Granted, we want chamber, CVB, county, school, everybody, but who's gonna be the racehorse that starts this? And I think it starts with us.
What is, as far as administrator, do you have one administrator per account, or do you have multiples, or you have?
Right now with our app developing team, we are considering like a super administrator. So kind of somebody who, let's say somebody goes rogue on it, right? They're putting out information they shouldn't, a disgruntled employee or so, who knows, right? Worst case scenario, that they have the ability to remove access to all of the administrators below them. As of right now, that is our best case scenario, right? Where we're kind of strategically trying to think, how would that look? Trying to go through potential situations and how people will use it. There would be a number of people in our minds that would have administrator access. And for some people, let's say, hypothetically, that some people only need community calendar access and don't need access to news or obviously to send push notifications. Somebody who wants to send push notifications probably is going to be a super admin, right? You don't want text messages going out to the whole entire city that are not supposed to be going out to the entire
No,
city.
we do not.
So some of that has to be protected information and protected classes. So as of right now, we plan to have multiple classes of administrators and different types of access for different people.
So what's your vision of, time frame that somebody's gonna have to invest in this to keep it up to date and keep it, new and fun and, I guess, informational, so to speak? Somebody has to sit on here hourly, daily, weekly?
No, I'm certainly hoping that's not the case, Steve. Is it going to take more time out of some people's? Yes, but really, as somebody who runs multiple businesses, I find myself when I'm doing one notification on Facebook, right, or adding to LinkedIn or what have you, it takes me just a few seconds more to do the next account, to do whatever it is. It really is not crazy time consuming for me to post to multiple places. I create something in Canva, I throw it on, my 3 Facebook accounts, onto my LinkedIn, onto my Instagram, You know, there's different apps for different things. You know, as somebody who does that consistently, I don't see it being something that's going to inundate any one particular person's time. I think, you know, Christy, mind if I use an example? You put on events at the library, a ton of events at the library. So as an event planner, number one, it takes time, brainstorming, strategizing, coming up with a plan, logistics, you know, all of that takes a ton of time. Creating flyers, putting it on Facebook, right? In there someplace. Oh, go ahead.
If you are not looking at our website, if you get there, there's some people don't know.
Yep.
Okay, they don't. You're not looking at our Facebook page. If you are not listening to KROX at the moment you should be, or subscribing to the Times, or looking at it online.
Yep.
You don't know what's going on here.
Nope. And I can say,
And for everyone
true.
involved in this is a way of protecting their investment and their partnerships with anyone and everyone that they have some, you know, money into.
Yep.
Because it's a way of ensuring that people are going to know about all of these things that are going on.
Yep.
I think it's
thank you. I appreciate that. It's been 5 years in the making.
Megan, I'd like to make a comment. I think this is a great idea. I think, what is our next step as a council? And I think I've heard about a lot of things, and this sounds like it's a great idea, and we need to get the three-phase kind of proposal, and how that's gonna work. We need a little bit more information, but what do you think, council? I think it's a great idea if we can get started at it and see how it goes.
Your vision is by the end of the year to have a decision of where we're going, or?
Yeah, I would prefer, you know, sooner than later. Like I said, the first 10, I plan on the next few weeks pitching this to multiple cities. It was really important for me to start in Crookston because, like I said, that's kind of where my story began. This story began. But I, you know, plan to pitch it to a number of cities over the next several weeks. The first 10 who sign contracts are going to be in my pilot group, who get kind of that special, what Christy was talking about in terms of, you know, giving a lot of additional feedback, looking at focus groups from those areas, really having our app developers study how people are using it in those areas. And I would love for Crookston to obviously be in one of those top 10 spots, not just for my own selfish ease of access to you all, but because I think it's a good thing for the 10 pilot cities to be able to help personalize it the way that your users are going to use it.
And
So,
we will, for us and our budget development, the sooner that the committee members can give us a consensus on how to move forward, because we will need to work that in to the budget. So for us, within the next week would be really best, because on the 27th, you will be seeing what you will be asked to approve to be your preliminary max levy.
Yeah, what's a way that we could get it out there and get some feedback? I mean, this is taxpayer money. We're talking about $10,000. I'd like to have some feed in from the city, the
In the next
taxpayers and the.
week, I can do my very best, but I don't know what kind of response we would get in a week. We can try to put some things out.
But I'd like to see, get something going anyway. I mean, it is taxpayer money. It is $10,000. It is, a yearly fee. There is a lot of investment in this, and, I guess, if we get a little bit of feedback's better than none, I guess.
I have a couple questions. Just kind of going off of what Steve had to say. I'm really concerned about not having other entities buying in now, because this is great and the city can use it for what they need to use it. But if the chamber decides that this isn't worth their time, or if the school decides this isn't worth their time, then this isn't going to be as successful for us for just city information. My other thought, and I don't know, Megan, if you looked at this in the development, is there any way to monetize this? And then last, is there any way to get an actual demo of what it does and how it does it? Because, that for me would, be really helpful to make a better decision if I really knew how it really worked outside of some screenshots.
Yeah, so I do apologize. I was hoping to have a demo available tonight. Unfortunately, the main app developer is from Louisiana and spent the last few weeks in Louisiana trying to help with the hurricane cleanup. So that changed plans a little bit, but such is life, more important things. In terms of, so I can get that to you. I'll ask the app developers to, I have actually, unfortunately, I can't because it's on an app on my phone. I can't, I don't think I can just put it up to Chad here, but it is something, I don't know, how close would I need to get to Christy for her to see this?
If you turn toward that camera and just hold it statically, I'll see if I can zoom in. Give me 1 second.
So Christy, this is not a fully functioning app at this point, it's a prototype.
What?
It gives you the idea that, how's it looking, Chad?
Yeah, we're in.
Okay. As of right now, it is more a linear model, okay? You can see obviously that there is a photo for your own profile. Again, that would be a requirement upon completing, like when you log into the app for the first time, you have to set preferences. That's a really important feature, is to make sure that, again, the end user is getting what they want out of the app, and us not making assumptions of each thing. So you create a list of preferences. Let's say I like wine, and I like, books or something like that. All of a sudden, when Chris goes in to make an event, she can kind of list the number of things that are features of the type of app or type of event that she's putting on. I am a horse person. I like horse events. I would like to know all the horse events in a 120-mile radius. I can get notifications for those specific types of things. Now, are all of you going to want horse event notifications? Probably not. Yours wouldn't show that, okay? Hope to see some of you at the wine and book club type of stuff. So,
Books and brews.
books and brews, boom. So, this right now, Christy in particular, just because this is your question, is going to look, they based it off of Minneapolis, just so you know. Again, that's not necessarily my target market, not that I wouldn't sell this to Minneapolis, but my bread and butter and really focusing on the type of communication I focus on is on, mid-level cities, basically 15,000 and less. I think is a different type of life here than we do with people of communities of, 100,000, 200,000, right? So in this case, you'd have, parks, food, sports. You can kind of search if you want. Again, you're going to get push notifications for the specific personalized things that you've requested. You have your upcoming events scroll. Another thing to just kind of, oh, that's right, we had that tonight. Oh, that's right, the high school's playing. How many more people, I work at the University of Minnesota Crookston. It's sometimes sad to see how many people are in the events, in the stands at athletic events. And I have to say, I don't think it's always because there's not competition. Some of them are a heck of a lot of fun to watch. I'm biased, former player myself, but
Sometimes there's 4 games going on at the same night.
sometimes there are.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is that, but sometimes it's the fact that nobody knows what's going on, right? And they don't.
I'll tell you this, you can do whatever you want in the world and there's gonna be people saying, I never heard that, I never saw that. I never got that bill in the mail saying they're gonna do a road in front of my house. It's tough. I mean, and I know it's a nice product and that I'd like to see, like she said, the demo on it and maybe
Kick the
sit down and
tires.
think around about it for a bit before committing to it, but I mean, it definitely is on something we've been looking for, so maybe we can move on from that, or,
I think it'd be a good idea just to, get it on our Facebook page, get some feedback from it. We don't have to make a decision next Monday for, whatever, but it's one of those things,
Well-
we can throw it in the budget and we can always say, all right,
Yes,
You know,
the
it,
decision that I need from you is whether or not to include it in the budget. And I think for Megan, having a commitment is what she's looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not to put pressure. This is for some people, it's for some people, or for some communities, it's for, and for some people it won't be, and that's, I mean, there's no changing that in terms of, you know, I hope that it's something that people can see the value in, the way I see the value in it, and that it can really truly change, again, the experience of people within communities and truly connect communities. You know, in terms of my business, yes, I have commitments to make in terms of buying in for each part of the process, right? So of course it's going to make my life a little bit easier having early contracts signed and, you know, a commitment that way, and also being able to have those early conversations, because in the next phases, that's really where a lot of decisions are made in terms of what does it look like? What do you want? I don't really want to have to make all those decisions myself and make those assumptions. I don't work in city government. I don't work for the chamber. I would rather be able to call my contacts and say, hey, we're at this phase and, you know, these are the options. Which one sounds the best, right? And find that out. So of course it's going to help me to have earlier buy-in to be able to develop a better product for you. But ultimately that's your decision.
So what's the consensus here? What do you guys want to do?
I think we should move forward on this and get it planned.
I think, like Steve said, maybe if nothing else, get it put in the budget for now. We need to have some more conversation on this here from the community.
So Megan, how soon would you have to have a commitment if we go that route?
The very latest would, yes, be about probably December 1st.
Okay, so we got a little bit of time.
Yeah.
So consensus is just go ahead and budget for it and go from there?
I think budget for it, but then let's talk to our partners, whether that's chamber and what have you, and see about buy-in financially to that piece as well. And Megan, is there any opportunity for some type of monetization of this?
Oh, I'm
Like-
sorry, Christy, I failed to answer that part. Yes, so currently, first of all, yes, whether it's buy-in in terms of splitting the cost and reducing that greatly for the city, that is option one. A city that I'm potentially working with in Michigan, the state of Michigan, would like to be able to, like, I think it was a dentist that said, I would love to pay to be the first dentist listed in the city, right? Okay, again, in terms of the developer or like the innovator behind this, I don't care. That's great. If that's what, you know, certain cities want, is to be able to push it out to businesses to kind of market themselves or have certain marketing capabilities, whether it's sending discounts, right? Lunch specials, things like that. Maybe certain businesses want to chip in a small fee or something to be able to do that. That's certainly, the beauty of it being an early app is that those are all possibilities, yes. It is currently being discussed in terms of advertisements. I'm personally not a fan of advertisements on apps. I think it changes the user experience. Again, that's my focus of this. My app developers have said there are ways to do it strategically, to do it seamlessly, to do it tastefully, where it's not impeding the end user's experience. I am open to that if that is something that can be proven to me, but I can tell you I will pay the $49.99 per year service on some of these apps just to not get pop-ups. As a business person, when I said it, you know, my efficient use of my time is, you know, that's fine. The other side of that is I will pay to make sure it is efficient for me. That's from a business owner standpoint, right? So yes, Christy, monetization is a potential, and which way it's gonna look, still up in the air, but yeah, it's certainly there.
I think, Christie, it's gonna be, I think city, you know, we can get buy-in from the chamber and CVB is great, but I think, you know, we're gonna have to be the leaders moving forward with this if we wanna do it. So.
Yeah, I would agree with you completely, but you know, I think Tom actually made a good point when he said that, you know, if these people are paying a certain amount of money into this, maybe they're more likely to have the buy-in and actually utilize the product because there is some type of actual buy-in per se. So just something to consider as we go forward. But I think putting it in the budget right now doesn't hurt, and then us having these conversations at a later time.
Right, okay.
But as far as, you know, development of this thing, like the calendar side of this that you're talking about, is it unlimited what you can throw in there? I mean, is it
As far as I'm told, it's unlimited, yep. To help with that, you know, things that have moved past their dates would, I believe, disappear to try to open up things, right? So like looking back, like you can kind of look back on Facebook events, for instance, and kind of replicate. As of right now, that's not the plan with this. Not saying that that's not a possibility. Can certainly be part of a conversation if it's something that is helpful later. But yes, as of I've asked what is the max number of users we can get to? What is the max number of events? I've not been given a end number on any of those things, so that is good.
You know, that's maybe something we can hash around, is like, okay, if we bought the initial $8,500 and we partnered with these other guys and they paid the monthly fee, so we didn't have any more fee, that would be one way of doing it. They don't have to put in the big bite and that. But I think we should talk about this at another time.
Yeah, we got quite a bit of agenda items
Sorry
here.
to take so much of your time, everybody.
That's fine. Thank you, Megan.
I think I have some good direction from you, and we can reach out to some of the community agencies and talk to them and consider some ideas on how that might look for cost sharing and bring that back to you.
And if we could get a demo to see kind of.
I personally can't help you with that, but I know Megan can.
I will be in touch with my app developers.
Don't put it to my phone.
I'll be in touch with my app developers to see if I can get that to you all. And then as you're having those conversations with, whether it's, the University of Minnesota Crookston or the Chamber or whomever else that you're looking at wanting those conversations with, if you want me to be part of that conversation, I'm open to that too. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. We have police budget.
Okay, I think for staff that's here, I think Chad set up this table. If you want to sit at it, you can, just so you don't have to run back and forth. I'm going to start us out running through. Just want to talk a little bit. One of the main changes that we made was just running a recalculation on the salary line in this budget based on actual employees. Let me scroll down here. And I just wanted to go through some of the notes. Chief and Darren have done a really nice job providing
Thinking about it.
good information for us as we've gone through this. And I tried to just highlight some of the bigger changes we saw. So line 0206 for investigation supplies is all the new testing for new hires. And some of those, the training is necessary, especially as you're bringing someone on. We want to make sure we're covering that. And then some of the investigation supplies cost is going up. 0207, cost of ammunition is increasing. So you'll see a slight increase there. In 0221, we have a decrease. I just made a note here that vehicle repair costs have been dropping. I just wanted to note that. We don't get to see a lot of decreases in the budget as we go through. 0222.
Which one are you going on here?
On the,
I got 0211, is that what you said? No.
Oh, 221.
I'm sorry, I may have said that, I'm sorry. I'm on 0221, repairs equipment.
22.
Next page.
On 0222, building repairs and maintenance is up slightly. Some expenses with overhead doors. Plumbing vent pipes coming up, so planning for that. On safety expense, which is 0243, we've got an increase. Just COVID-related items and supplies there.
When it's COVID-related stuff, is there any of these funds that can be used for that?
Like the American Relief Funds?
Well, whatever they're coming out with, if it's COVID expenses or any money in there
I don't-
anywhere?
The ARPA funds, I don't believe have that in there.
And it's not so much COVID as it started with COVID, and now the way we operate, like at a death scene or at a crime scene, it's changed on what we wear, more of that disposable equipment.
Yep.
So some of those everyday costs are going up, and those kind of things, I don't believe are gonna fall under any of that money anymore. They did initially last year.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay.
On the next page, at least my next page, I'm on 0520, buildings and structures. That is increased significantly, and that is an estimate for bringing ADA doors into compliance, installing 2 new security doors, allowing for proximity card access, video cameras inside and outside the building, and then the software and hardware to operate those improvements. The next is 0550, motor vehicles. New squad car to replace a 2018 squad at 40,000, and a 2008 detective vehicle at 25,000. So the increase there is just increase in used vehicle prices that we're experiencing. And in other equipment, 0580. Let me get down, I made an arrow, what did that mean? Equipment for an additional officer with chief's retirement. As much that can be reissued will be, but depending on size of officers and people, some of those things do have to be reordered. So trying to plan ahead for that and hopefully not having to use that full expense line. Chief or Darren, or both of you, do you have anything you would add that I missed or would like to share? Or do any of you have questions for the chief?
Not specifically, but we'll sure answer any questions if somebody has
Is that-
questions.
On your reloading, is that, do you just do that for your shooting targets and practice stuff? Is that what you reload for?
0241, ammunition reloading.
Yeah. Is that both reloading and ammunition, or is it ammunition and line?
We don't, it's called ammunition reloading, but keep in mind, the titles on these lines probably go back a good 40 years or 50 years. We don't do reloading anymore.
Makes sense.
That's good.
What'd you say?
I said that's good.
It is good.
It's kind of a broad section. There's a lot of different purchases for ammunition that come out of there. So.
That's a good point. So keep in mind, that's pistol, rifle, shotgun, less lethal, civil unrest munitions, taser.
Training rounds, things
That's
like
right,
that.
so I thought that's
Yeah.
pretty cheap, is when you go into Shields and you got a one box, it's $30 or $40.
Well, we take advantage of any state pricing we can across the board. But the other problem with this is some of this stuff is in such high demand that, I mean, we're at least 6 to 12 months minimum out by the time we place an order before we receive anything. So it's a little difficult to order sometimes, but
Yeah, the severance one, is that for retirements then?
It is, yes. Yep, I'm sorry, I skipped over that one.
I'm thinking about it, Amy, when we go kind of narrow this down and cuts have to be made, wherever, could you do a cheat sheet, so it's like, I mean, I made notes all the way through here why the adjustment is, but to kind of narrow it down to say, you know, this is what that is for, so it makes it easier to, like, if it's bulletproof vest would be harder to cut than, you know, something, whatever, I mean.
Well,
But isn't that mostly on that 5-year plan? You
Well,
got
that's,
them
you know,
kind
it's
of,
not only, you know,
thinned
look at
out.
this, just like in one department here, you got 6 different, I mean, you got $145,000, which, you only have in your capital improvement, you have, less than like 80,000, so I mean, it's one of those things that it doesn't always work off of that either. Like I said, every time we do this and you start looking at stuff, it's like, okay, we're gonna have to cut something, where do you start? It's like, I save them all here to go through them and find out, you know, like, that's a necessity, you know, that's, you know, really can't cut that, or, you know.
I know, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I do hope that the council will allow staff to determine that. We're gonna sit as a group. I would not do as good of a job at determining that very thing in the police budget as Chief and Darren would. So after tonight, we've got some things at the end that I'm hoping you will give us a little bit of direction on, that we'll sit down as a leadership team and kind of make some of those judgments. Certainly, our safety equipment to keep our officers safe. At the same time, our servers to keep our systems running. We just have to make some of those determinations on where you want us to be. And then, yes, we do plan to come back to you and tell you how we got to the number that you've requested. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
as long as we're gonna get some feedback
Yeah.
down the road.
Yes,
Like,
absolutely.
this is what we got, this is the bottom number, this is the best, we can do
Yes.
without really cutting something major.
Yes.
I mean, that's kind of what, for me, that's what I would like to see. to be
Yes,
able to say,
absolutely. We do plan on that. So anything that after we get through these budgets and talk about where we want to be, we will then meet as a group, but come back to you with information, not just a number. So you will be able to see within each budget what made up that difference.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the chief? No? Okay.
Thanks.
That was too quick?
No, that wasn't too quick, Steve. Thank you for your time, everybody. Sorry to take up so much time,
The
Wayne.
next one will be a little lengthier
That's fire?
when you start cutting.
Oh, I thought you meant the next.
No, next time you're back here.
All right.
Bring the other chief up to the hot seat.
We're losing an officer here.
What's that? That was for,
At least he told you.
isn't it?
That's right.
This total is for all what you see there.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
One of you stay. Okay. Okay, I am next on the fire budget, and I'm sorry, you guys will have to bear with me a little bit. I'm trying to keep myself somewhat organized here. Okay. I'm gonna kind of take the same approach and run down some of the notes that we identified as maybe most significant in this budget, and then Chief will help us answer any questions. I'm gonna start with line 0234, annual maintenance. That is up a little bit. That is the new service contract for the, what is that, what are those called?
New self-contained breathing apparatus, the one that we got that grant for. We're
Oh,
gonna do
yes.
an annual service contract on those, which we
Thank
should have been doing.
I didn't even make it through the first one and I needed assistance. Next one, we have 0354, public information. That's increased slightly to continue the smoke alarm and carbon monoxide detector program for the community. 0520, under building and structures, has money plugged in for a meeting room and training room floor. That is just materials. The department will do the labor there in their building. Okay, 0540 is equipment, and that includes turnout gear, and, let me look. This has a water rescue craft for 10,000. I believe that's also on the CIP, I think. Okay. And we are down to 0550 for motor vehicles. I want to talk a little bit about this one. This shows an increase of $5,000. Several years ago, they make an annual allocation towards reserving for a new on a truck replacement schedule. One of those years was deferred, and as of right now, we are gonna be about $47,000 behind on reserving for that truck. So that $5,000, we would like to up that allocation to try to catch up on that. Chief has a schedule, and I know you can't see it real well here, but here in the red would be right after we would have to make that purchase in 2030. So we'd like to start trying to catch up that one deferred reserve payment so that we're on track to make that purchase.
When was that deferred? Has it been recently? Do you know? offhand?
That
Chief,
was deferred about 2-3 years ago when budgets were, you know, kind of like what you said earlier. It wasn't one that I wanted to cut, but the council cut that one out of my budget, which I didn't agree with. I thought that should have been something like we should be able to make our decisions, kind of just like you said, Steve, but the council made that decision.
I remember that.
What truck would we be replacing?
That would be for one of our engines. That'd be one of our frontline engines. Yep, we have a schedule all out, and by adding up that $5,000 for the next several years, it'll get us back on track again.
who knows what,
What'd you say the balance was gonna be short, 45,000?
47? And that's assuming that prices are gonna be what we anticipated. That's something we've discussed. As we get closer to that date of needing to replace, we'll have to really evaluate and see if we're reserving the appropriate amount or what that cost might come in to be. The last note that I had here was 0580 under other equipment. This includes station chairs and then a laptop for engine 3. It's actually more than a laptop, and I will see if Chief can maybe describe that a little bit better for me.
Yeah, that's what, you know, it's kind of on the same order as what the police officers have in theirs. We'd use it for like inspections, doing all of our rental and commercial inspections in schools. Have all of our pre-plans on there of all of our commercial properties. So when we're at the scene, we can actually bring everything right up. Hydrant locations, have all of our infrastructure on it, you know, our storm sewers, water mains, railroads. Use it for hazmat incidents, you know, weather and hot zones, cold zones, depending on the chemical and everything like that. We're also on like complaints. We also are always looking up parcel owners and property owners and parcel numbers and stuff like that. It'd be nice to have that stuff at our fingertips instead of always having to call back to the fire station, and we'd have it right on scene.
Anyone have questions on the fire budget?
Explain the jet ski. You've had that on there for years.
And I'm still not getting it. But anyhow, you know, everybody knows. I'm sorry.
Do you use one from the DNR, or am I thinking something else?
No, that's our jet boat.
Okay.
Yep. The jet ski type apparatus would be, you know, I mean, this water's been so low these last several years, and with the rock rapids and everything else. You're using a tiller type boat, and there's just not feasible where we end up having to go and at any kind of a speed. Especially if someone needs rescuing. We've been out in the middle of the night trying to find people, and you know, you just don't know what you're gonna hit with your tiller motor. With the location of the boat launches, I mean, something small like that, we could go right across from the fire hall and pitch it into the water, you know, I mean, underneath one of the bridges. It's just for speed of deployment. We have the new access on out at the Gently Bridge. We have people coming from Red Lake Falls. We have people coming from Gently, Hewitt Park. I mean, our river's getting used an awful lot more. And I just think when there's a distress call, we need to get to them as soon as we can. Time's of essence, just like anything else when we're called in for any kind of a rescue.
You still got the airboat from DNR then?
Yep, we still have that, so,
I know it's been talked in the past that they're gonna pull that, but I mean.
anything. They might have forgot. No, so it's been a good asset what we've had.
Okay.
Chief's got one more budget for emergency management, and that one remains completely unchanged from prior year.
Best one I've seen so far.
Now, that one there, we do use it, and, but we use it very wisely, just like our other budgets, and I didn't see any reason to up that one whatsoever.
Are you ever gonna have any more classes on the emergency, like say
On our
CERT
CERT?
teams and that kind
Yeah,
of stuff?
if we could get through this little bit of COVID craze, we were planning on one this spring, and, of course, last year we couldn't do it. We talked about doing one this fall here, let's just hope that, things straighten out here, cause Tom, you're not the only one that asked for it, we got a lot of people saying, when are we coming, when are we getting together, we have a lot of people that wanna join, and,
Yep.
you know, and I appreciate your dedication to that all these years too, so. And several of the councilmen here too. So we will, as soon as we see it's safe to bring everybody together.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you, Chief.
Am I off?
I think you're
Thank you very much.
free to go.
You can contact me anytime if you have any questions too, if something comes up, absolutely.
All right, next one that you should have in your package is the community development budget. So this one's new. So in your current budget, you're gonna see all zeros. Most of this was built from, after looking through the Cheetah budget, moving things that were allocated under the economic development column there, into this budget. I wanna make one note on the salaries. 5%, 10% total, let me say it that way, 10% total is budgeted to come from the housing budget. Worked with Teresa on that because this position is designed to supervise that staff. There would be some reporting or authorizing duties for housing. So that's one change from what we discussed before. Under professional fees, 0312, we just plugged in a number there that number did come from the Cheetah budget, but for things such as engineering or things that may come up through projects and working with developers. And then 0433 was my next note. Subscriptions and dues, we just did transfer that over from what was allocated in the Cheetah budget. There are certainly organizations and associations that we would want our director to be a part of for economic development. And then in 0531, this is certainly somewhere we have some wiggle room, but this was a little bit of what was left from transferring over from the Cheetah budget and plugged that in just for other projects that may come up, that you would see before you that they may make a recommendation to allocate towards for economic development. So that's somewhere we've got a little bit of wiggle room on there. Do you have any questions on this budget?
Well, when you say projects that come up, the Cheetahs, they still have that 350,000?
Cheetah does,
They
well,
don't have the whole
they don't have
350.
350,000. Right, yes, that pool of money still exists at Cheetah.
So okay.
Yeah,
So you said it was 10% for the budget coming off the, housing side?
yeah, yeah. And Teresa was helpful in kind of researching that and helping develop that for me.
Well, I say if you get a director though, would he be doing both of them?
Both
If
of,
you get a new economic development director?
under Cheetah?
Yeah,
There's not money in the budget now unless the city was planning to fund both of those department
well, I was
heads.
just saying before, wasn't it 40-60 split kind of out of there?
It was,
Yeah. So more coming out of the housing than 10%, or can there be more than that, or what?
I would have to ask that question. I'm not sure, because the duties would be slightly different. That's where Teresa and I felt like that might be the best split, but I can certainly have that conversation and see her thoughts on that. One of the, we'll just have to make sure just to try to find that balance, and that may be something we have to work through as we get someone in. Okay. The next one I have is Valley Tech Park. And as you will see here in just a little bit, we've made a few adjustments to this. I have not shown you our overall yet. You see it in front of you on your tables, but, and I'm not gonna get too deep into this, but there were some really challenging things that we encountered in the development and preparation of this budget, and we've already tried very hard to cut some things that we thought were either not unnecessary, and I don't want it to sound as if there were things in the budget that weren't necessary, but really tried to take a hard look at where we could slim down. This was one of those budgets. We really took a hard look at prior year actuals to see if we were actually coming in where these budgets were set. So you'll see some reductions in this particular budget. Janitor supplies, just based on prior year actuals, we lowered. Building and repairs, looked at kind of the average of some prior year actuals there. Same with office equipment. And then other improvements, that has been set at about $25,000 for several years, at least the ones that I've looked back on. This particular year included $10,000, which is a reserve for furnace and HVAC. I think that one's pretty important to keep in there and plan ahead for. There was also an item that was for cubicle to office reconfiguration out there. In my opinion, in the budget year that we're in right now and some of the things that we have to handle, we chose to defer that to the next year. So that gives a little bit of relief here in this budget. And then the very last line, 0820 administration, that is what we currently reimburse Cheetah for some of the copiers. I believe the lease for the whiteboards, the smart boards that are there. And then if you remember at the last Cheetah meeting, it did show there was a little bit of a deficit in the economic development column. Therese has done a little bit of work there, but this amount will also cover that so that we can transfer that back over and make that particular budget column whole. So that covers that without needing an increase there. So that, with the income that's coming in, actually we'll schedule some to be put into reserve, which is ideal, especially so that we can then continue to talk about some of those building improvements that we've deferred, or if something comes up, we're saving a little bit for that.
That was your plan, to have that reserve as of, just for out there, right, for that building?
Yes.
Instead of putting the general fund type
Yeah,
of thing?
yeah, this fund, 208 for Valley Tech Park does have its own reserve, so the plan would be anything that we get that is not spent down, then would transfer over to that reserve.
So as of now, it shows with this 84,790, that basically should cash flow the building and have a little
Right.
extra with that?
Yep, absolutely. Any questions on that one? Okay. The next one you have is professional fees. This is kind of a funny little budget. The very top line, professional fees, is where our assessment billings are coded each year. That's pretty static line. The second one, 0720, transfer to other funds. If you'll notice in the current budget column, it shows 155,000. That is actually where your Cheetah contribution was transferred from the general fund. So that this fund does impact your overall levy. What we've done here is left in, I'm sorry, let me get this in front of me. $35, okay. So in that transfer to other funds, this has included in the past the $15,000 that the city sends to Cheetah to send to the Northwest SBDC. I wasn't here when that decision was made. I'm not sure why it was done that way. But that's what 15,000 of that is. And then 20,000 we left just as a buffer as we go through this transition from some of the duties shifting under the community development director, that if there's a snag with the Cheetah budget, that we can still have a way and a place plugged in to support that if we need to.
That 15,000 for that SBCD or whatever, that was supposed to be a one-time deal, and it's been an every year deal.
I think for Cheetah, now the city,
Even for Cheetah, it wasn't supposed to be an ongoing
okay,
expense.
We didn't contribute to it last year, I don't
the
think, did we?
city
I
did
think
not.
I
Yeah,
thought he
city
did
did
some.
not, I don't think.
The city did not,
Cheetah
but
did.
Cheetah did,
Yeah.
yeah.
But did the city give it to Cheetah to do
The
it?
city gave the money to Cheetah to give to SBDC. That seems like a really long route to me. So it really, truly, the city has either given 30,000 or 15,000
Yeah.
from your levied funds. And that's important to think about it that way, but, and that's, I left that in there because we just need some guidance from you on if that's something you wish to send over, and we can,
I guess myself, I'd like to see, because, you know, it's always been that same story, that they're going out to get other investors to invest in this thing, and it never seems to happen. So I guess I'd be looking at this one to cut it, so,
I
Either
did-
that or ask Christie to come in and explain to us.
yeah, do something, because I mean, it's been every,
Because it was supposed to be a, you know, finite number
yeah.
that, you know, it was gonna have a sunset after 1 or 2
Michelle that
years.
does that now?
No, she's got a different boss. Her boss now is Philip. I think he's out of Bemidji. Not
Okay.
I can reach out and see if she can maybe come next Monday and
Yeah,
visit.
we haven't heard boo from him in
No,
2 years, I think.
no.
No.
I will say, I will be getting to this a little bit later, but that was one of, because it was not funded from the city, this year in 2021, it wasn't in this budget. That was one of the things that I have taken out of the council budget, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, to get to where we are today, so. I will make a note and see if we can't, have someone come visit with us about that.
Last year, wasn't Cheetah asking for 155 and we gave, but basically it was well, it came out of the general fund anyway, because I think it was 140 and then that 15 he
Right.
gave the,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's where it went to 155.
I think,
Yeah.
I read minutes maybe that, the 15 was allocated to Cheetah to decide if they wanted to give it to SBDC. I think is how it was voted on, which,
Yep.
Yeah, 'cause
Right.
I know
So
the
then it
city,
was-
that was one of the first things that got whacked, was that 15 to that organization, because
from the city side,
from the
yeah.
city side, so, you know, and I guess if we decide as a council to say, you know, Elias, coming from the city, it's 15,000, that's why I think we put it on the 40,000 to make it a 55,000, I think.
right.
Okay, I made that note, so we'll see if we can. The next, this is on the same, number 6, but it's, the next page is auditing. We've just made a slight increase there. We would like to go out and ask for RFPs, requests for proposals, late this year, going into next year. That will actually, I would like to do it for 3 things, and I think it's consistent with how I have done things since I've come. Anytime we are going through a process and naming someone new, I would like to see us go do RFP for our auditing, our engineering, and then our legal. I think that allows you to really sit down, even if you end up engaging the same firm or institution, gives you an opportunity to really sit down and kind of set your expectations out again and make sure you're asking for the things that you need and timelines and those things. So we did our best estimate here, but thought increasing it a little bit. We had a really long audit this year. We are still actually waiting on a few things. We have a meeting this week to discuss a draft audit, so I'm hopeful that we'll have that before you at your next council meeting on the 27th. But just trying to prepare for those things as we go forward. Okay, and then I know the one you've all been waiting for is the legal budget. So I have some information I want to share with you, and then I will answer any questions that you have. I took a hard look at this budget, and I'm going to tell you some things that I observed first. One is that this budget has remained at the same level since 2016. Now, it's been set at 110,000, and I'm on the 0312 line. The 0310, the substitute attorney, is for if we engage Flaherty and Hood for a personnel matter or something like that. And then the travel and training is kind of self-explanatory. In 2019, the budget was set at 110,000. Your criminal charges alone came in at 95,563. Your total at the end of the year, you were billed 136,600. So 26,600 over budget. Going into 2020, the budget remained at 110,000. Your criminal charges in 2020 totaled $117,000. So your criminal alone exceeded the entire budget line. Had that budget been adjusted based on actuals, I would assume you would have set that at about 137,000. You still would have been over a little bit, but not quite so much. Going into 2021, budget still remained 110. Could have probably adjusted to closer to 149. We've talked a little bit in the past about what's happening with some of our criminal trends. Part of that depends on how many patrol officers you have out, how assertive they are. The other part of that is the change in how the court hearings are being done, where they used to schedule them where Crookston went all at once. Now our prosecuting attorney must sit there during the day. Some are still being done virtually, some are not. The criminal it's certainly not something you wouldn't want to pay for. We want to be enforcing, we want to keep our city safe. We are projected right now, and this could fluctuate a little bit. I ran a projection at probably 105,000 in criminal and probably 75 in civil. So looking at 179 is what I'm estimating. If we had adjusted budget year over year, our budget would have been 149 this year, not 110. I'm actually surprised that this budget has remained the same. Keeping your budget amount the same and exceeding it every year does not help, other than how it looks at first blush when you're passing your budget. It's the same thing with some of the inflated revenues that I found. That's really not helpful if you're not bringing them in. What I'm proposing for next year, on an estimation, I'm estimating 115,000 for criminal. I took the average from 2020 to 2021 is 112. It doesn't appear to be going down. I plugged in 115 just for an estimate. We looked at what we're projected right now, and the last few months we will see decreases in our civil. I did make some notes on the things that we've taken care of this year that, in my opinion, are not ongoing and are things that were a bit abnormal for us this year. We had 2 of our farm leases that, for me, are brand new. Some of those leases were found to have errors in dollar amounts that had to be corrected in meetings with the tenant. One, that's an embarrassment to us at the city, and when we're giving something out, especially a public document, we want to make sure it's right. And that the city's protected also, and that all of the things that the city needs in a lease agreement are in there. We had the UMC Arena lease. That was a long process. Tax forfeited land. We had the Herkenoff proposed land purchase. We've had 2 personnel matters that did require both our city attorney and outside counsel. We had the school resource officer contract that also needed updated. There were just some things that weren't quite up to snuff, maybe a little bit outdated. The Cheetah restructure, Epitome Energy. When I started, we had an outstanding citizen complaint. A citizen had filed with the state requiring our response, and over a year later, we had not responded. That took work. What we have done is developed some draft resolutions now that Ashley can develop for us. When we have a contract, when we have certain things that are more routine, we have a template, if you will, to start with. Now we can make sure that we have everything in that we need. Corky is not here, which might mean his flight was late. He was expected back from LA tonight. What I did in this proposal for civil was project 56,000. I would like to propose a flat budget instead of being billed by the hour. It's really, really difficult for staff if you have to prioritize. I know that there are times that it's not okay to decide that your city attorney should not be involved. That's what they're there for us to do. However, there's some things that we would like to change internally, and whatever the response on the RFP is, this will be an expectation for us. We would like to send and receive all documents electronically. That's more efficient for us at the city. That may mean that a firm chooses to do things differently internally, and that's okay. But for us, receiving an electronic document with track changes that we could utilize back and forth. So that is a way I think, one, will save us time on our city side and should save us some time on some of our billable hours. Ashley and I have talked about developing kind of a work order system, if you will. Her and I review things first, and then we will determine what exactly we need done. Sometimes it's a contract that another agency provides, and we just want to scan and make sure that the city's protected. I actually found, I'm not going to say which one it is because we're going to be fixing it. We have a lease that we entered into that instead of holding the city harmless, the language was flipped, and it holds the tenant harmless, and that wasn't the intent. So there's some things that we just need to make sure are right as we move forward with some of the leases. I would like to see us go forward, and that's the 56,000 is a 25% reduction on what we're projected this year. And totals at the rate we're being billed to about 400 hours. I've got that somewhere, which is about 19% if you were looking at full-time working days or full-time hours for civil. Questions, comments?
There's no way to recoup any of the criminal side of this, being as crazy number as that is. I mean, don't they pay court costs? Don't
They
pay
do,
some
so I did take a
restitution?
look at that. Chief may have to weigh in here, but it is helping to offset that. Did I pull? I don't remember if I pulled year-to-date or last year. I did put down about 40,000 was offset by court and traffic fines. So it does, and that does come back into one of your revenue lines in the police department. I doubt that you would ever be able to charge fees, and Chief, you might want to weigh in on how those are set. But you'll probably never cover your criminal legal costs.
Correct. I don't know that we could try and recoup attorney's fees, if that's what you're getting at.
Oh, yeah. Some income.
Yeah, and I don't even think it's possible to do it as a form of restitution. Restitution is more for a victim of a crime. And I just think with our due process and the way it's set up, I don't, not in the criminal court. The civil court, they do that, but not in the criminal court.
And I will also add, we are in contact frequently with some officials at a neighboring city. They are experiencing the same upward trend in their criminal fees. It's not just here. It's just what is happening right now. And Chief, you may also have something to add to that, but.
Not necessarily. I think it's just part of the trend, and so much of, again, back to the due process, so many things are being challenged in the courts across the state and the country that it's all just taking longer. And then throw in the fact that I believe just this area is still short on judges. So everything gets backlog, takes a little bit longer, which increases our attorney's fees a little bit more if they have to sit up in the court and wait for the case to come up. But
curious, because like I said, it's, you know, it's 60% almost more than the civil side of it.
Yeah.
You know, with
And-
no income to come in to offset it hardly.
Right. We've
Tough to
been,
digest.
we've watched those, I don't have that all the way up in front of me, but we've watched the trends on that, and I would say sometimes it flip-flops, but very often your criminal part of your bill is higher than your civil. So, you know, and we'll have to, if we're proposing a flat fee, if you will, for civil, we're gonna have to be responsible users on our side. We can't pay someone 400 hours and expect full-time work either. So we're gonna have to be really purposeful on our side, and Ashley and I have talked through that and actually had a little discussion this evening about how we can do that. What we can front load on our end, be very specific about what we're asking for, even estimate a time, so that if it's additional to that, we can have a discussion, just kind of keeping a handle on that. Budget-wise, if it's just billable hours, that is very challenging to deal with things as they come up. And in my case, there was a lot that needed to be done when I came here. You simply cannot neglect responding to a citizen complaint to the state or county. You cannot and you should not do that. Those things don't just go away. So I do feel like it's our responsibility to do that, and I feel like we've cleaned up some of those. There are still things popping up. Some of the loans, the mortgages that needed released that are coming up as people are doing loan closings or property closings. So there may still be some of those things, but we're doing our best to be proactive in taking care of those as we see them.
I guess the two questions that I had was, and we've talked about this, of, okay, now you've broken that down from criminal and civil. And we're wondering, I was wondering, you know, okay, what did it actually cost us for, say, this with, when I asked about, say, garbage, and I get a response from our attorney, and then he comes and spends 45 minutes explaining garbage here. You know, I mean, things like that, I mean.
If he's at the meeting already, you're already paying him to be here. So it's not costing the city more if he addresses a question at council. Now, does it cost us if he prepares? Yes. Sometimes that's gonna be necessary.
I guess that was the question too. Some of the things that we've asked you about, you've gone to him, spent time with him, and then come back and he comes and spends time with us. Where, to me, that's like a double dip for him. He's doing the same thing or exploring or whatever, but is there any way that, you know, you can write that down so we know what it costs us to challenge this or to look at this or to, you know, I mean, we need it to be done. There's no doubt about it. But is it feasible for him to do it with you and then you explain to us?
That depends on what it is. Tax forfeited land, I'm not comfortable with that. I just don't, if you asked me a question, I don't feel that I could give you the best answer. Depending on what that is, perhaps, yes.
Because a lot of times we're getting his opinion.
Well, that's what your
You know,
legal
and
counsel
Not really
does.
a justification, not really a knock-down, drag-out answer of this is what this intended for. It's my opinion, and it's, I don't know, that's some of mine. But yes, if you had it, you know, down as to, this is what it costs us for the Herkenoff deal. This is what it costs us for this particular.
I wish that I could provide that for you, but the way that their billing is done, if multiple things are written down in one description, it's one set of hours. We've done our best to identify those, and that's what my list was, but I can't.
I know, but I get a kick out of it because you can go to coast or whatever, and you never, bolts, nuts, batteries, paintbrush, broom, but you can't get the $18,000 one to be divided up and tell you what the heck you're paying for.
And that is an expectation we can have in the RFP. I can't go back and give you that, but.
Understood.
But that's part of what we're doing internally as well, is trying to determine what we believe will be a necessary time, and then if there's a disagreement about that, then there's a discussion.
And with that said, that's where I don't know about putting this down as 400 hours and then trying to squeak under that. We're not here to pinch you. you know, for the time, it's just to be more accountable for it, because we know we gotta do the civil ones, right? I mean, there's no two ways about that,
Do you mean criminal?
or criminal ones, excuse me. You know, you got to do that. So, I mean, you know, we don't wanna tie your hands and say, well, we're not gonna do that, but we'll take care of this guy that's got a yard full of waste. And we used to have money, do
Well,
we have money put somewhere
well,
else for the fighting those goofy little
We
ones?
do, however, there are legal responsibilities when you go on someone's property and enforce the law. I'm not sure that I would be the best person for you to answer all of those legal questions. Someone's property should have a very stringent set of guidelines, criteria, legalities before a city council, code official, fire chief can go on the property. There are some things that just carry a higher level of responsibility.
But we went through that whole code book 5 years, 6 years ago, whatever it was. And then we adjusted with our, kind of made our own, where we made it stricter on some things. Is that just disappeared, or
Well,
was it
I
never-
wasn't here then, I will tell
No,
you.
I know you weren't.
There are things in the code book that very much need to be addressed that are out of date, but I can't do all of those things and combat your concerns about legal fees. Some of those are going to require legal fees. And what I've provided for you here is trying to set a cap on that. Does that mean something would happen that would take us over that? I don't know the answer to that. It will never be my recommendation to you to neglect a legal issue that we need to take care of.
But just like you said earlier, I hope that you're not putting the expectations on something that we know is not gonna happen. You know, we're not gonna say we're gonna make $1 million on collecting garbage fees, you know, and put that in there and say, we're gonna budget with that, because we figure we're gonna make it. Just like here, you say, don't put it in there so cheap that you know you can't stay within the budget.
Well,
So
I mean,
make it realistic, you explained it nicely,
if.
and let's, you know, move on from there, but with, you know,
We can take a look. I've explained to you I reduced 25%. We can take a look again and see is that too deep? And come back and.
you know, what are you comfortable with? I mean, you know, that's
Well,
part of it too.
That's difficult because part of my obligation and responsibility is to answer to this council. And there have been, what I'm hearing from you now is not what I have typically heard in response to our legal bills. Now,
You know, I hear quite often too, that, you know, we're paying somebody to research all this stuff, and maybe we should have a lawyer that knows it.
but
rather than have to
remember,
research it.
you had one
Yeah.
response to your RFP, one. So it's not that there were 10 people knocking down the door, and from what I know and from what I have read, I don't blame them for not wanting to get involved with some of the things that were going on at the council and staff level. But you get what responds to you. So it's not that there was a choice of 10 people lined up
Right.
also. So that's a challenge, and I think it's important to have a local city attorney, otherwise you are either Zooming someone in or they're traveling to you, and if you think that will be free, it won't. Or you don't have them here. And sometimes that's gonna be okay, depending on the meeting. Sometimes it would be nice to have someone be able to come up and answer that, and I agree. Are there people that specialize in municipal law? Possibly. They didn't respond to RFP. Will they? Maybe. As far as I know, for the last 30-plus years, the Reynolds Law Firm has been serving as your city attorney.
And maybe that's the thing, maybe when it first started, they were doing this researching too, but when you say 30-some years, they kind of got to know what
Right.
the laws were,
Yeah.
and so they didn't have to research all this stuff.
Right.
And now we're starting over, was because Chuck retired.
Well, and I also have gotten feedback that I am asking many more and different questions that administrators in the past have asked. I think that's my responsibility if I see something that doesn't look quite right or that we need more information on, and that's part of it too. I'm only about 1 year into Minnesota law, and some of it's similar to Kansas and some of it isn't. So I have to get up to speed on some of those things as well. The league's very helpful with that, but sometimes the league will almost always refer you back to your city attorney, and they're not gonna give you, they'll give you resources, but they won't really give you a decision other than to say, check with your city attorney. So that's why I believe, and we'll go back and take another look at this.
With that being said, okay, would we be better off, is there any kind of training for the Minnesota law that we'd be better off to send you to, so you're more aware of some of these things? Rather than having going on our attorney all the time?
I
That's
would
a
not,
slippery slope.
I don't believe I would give you, I would not give you legal advice. I could tell you what I heard or learned,
Yeah.
but as far as making sure how it fits in with our charter and our laws, I'm not.
Every January 1st, there's new Minnesota laws.
Yeah.
It changes yearly. Building codes change yearly. There's always something new.
What was your number for would you quote 400 hours or?
Yeah, that's what we have in here. $56,000 would be 400 hours at the rate we're billed.
Have you have any idea what we've done? I mean, this year has been pretty extreme for hourly wise, so where does that compare to the 440 to be somewhat
Oh, for
closer?
hours?
Yeah. And that, just to me, that would make a good comparison between this year that everyone's going, wow, we got huge numbers there, to the billable hours at 440 equaling out and.
So projected, what I'm projecting, and this is, give me a little wiggle room here, it's about 529 hours projected at that 74,000. And I do think Ashley has had to take on additional city clerk duties that she wasn't necessarily empowered to take on under previous administration. So there's a learning curve there, and she's done a very good job. She sat down, now I can, give a little bit of direction. She knows the template to use, and we're moving forward that way. So it's hard for me to say, is 400 hours reasonable? I've done my best estimate. Is it too steep of a cut? I expected to hear different from you. So we can go take a look at that and maybe make sure that we're comfortable with that.
Would it help, I know, like, rather than having Corky at every council meeting, would it be better to not have him at him, and then if there's a question come up, get it answered? Is that a way of kind of cutting some of this?
But if it's council decision, and you need to make a vote on a resolution, and then you're tabling it for 2 weeks,
Yeah.
it could be, that's not always good neither.
No, I know,
Well,
But there's
many-
nights that there's really not much on there.
Yeah.
True. There are times, and I'm speaking from my.
different areas, like planning commission and stuff like that, where he's sitting in on where he never was before. So
He's actually on the planning commission, I think. I think he's on it.
he's on it now?
Yeah, always has been.
Oh, well,
The-
nobody had been there for
Yeah.
years and years and years, and
Right.
all of a sudden,
Yeah,
that's why I'm saying that.
yeah,
So if he's coming there and he's getting paid, why would he be there if
Yeah.
there's nothing to be talked about?
part of, and this is also from my past municipal experience, there are times that staff, council people, citizens maybe, sometimes we get off on the wrong track, and there are things that we need to be reminded of about open meetings and always, certainly not. Can you plan for those? Not always. So we can look at that. It's my preference to have the city attorney, especially at council meetings. If you'll notice, we haven't had him at the budget meetings because we didn't feel, I did have him down today, but he knew that depending on his flight, he may not make it because of the legal budget. But we haven't had him at Ways and Means as a requirement because we're just going through budgets right now. So we are trying to work through some of those things the best we can, but let us take a look and at least come back and report back to you Monday where we land and see if we can.
kind of a double-edged sword there. No matter how you look at it, if you go contract or then you're, whatever, then you gotta skimp and whatever, which is not the answer either.
Right. However, even with billable hours, I'm feeling pressure from the city council to hold back now. And I've done my very best, but there are things I think we should be working on. I think we need to be working on our liquor ordinance, and Ashley and I will take a look at that, but there will be a point that the city attorney will need to review that. So it may slow some of the progress down, either way we go. If we went billable hours or a flat amount,
I think with our ordinances too, though, I mean, you maybe can't go through all of them, but pick out, so many of them a year and say, let's change these.
yeah,
get 'em
typically
right.
what we've done is as certain issues come up and we refer to our city code in hopes that it will be helpful to us, that's not always what we find if they're out of date, and try to kind of prioritize in that way. If we see something and we know it's not what we intend or how we can best function, trying to hit them in that way.
And I think in your explanation too, I mean, you being new, learning Minnesota law,
Yeah.
I think it was a little overwhelming to us. Now that you've explained it, it's a little bit better
Yeah,
than what it was as what we were seeing.
right,
So some of those things will come into play.
Right.
And probably slow down in the future.
I do think so.
Because, you're no longer new,
Right.
know your position better and stuff like that, so.
And have made different connections with other administrators as well, which is helpful sometimes to bounce something off and get some direction or find out what other people have done. That's helpful, but that does take a little bit of time to build some of those connections and relationships.
And my concern is that over the years we paid attorneys for years here, and to be that far behind the 8 ball by changing your administrator to find this many things out, when we've gone through 4 administrators, that's the thing that bothers me the most is like, we're paying, people do their job to get it done, and then have, up 50% in your lawyer fees for a year in the first year, and that's what kind of threw me for the loop. I mean, it's a heck of a budget item there from 110,000 to 171,000. I mean, to me, that was like, and I could see it progressing throughout the year, and it's as I kind of figured it was gonna end up there, and that was my, concern that we've talked about a million times on it, but
And
I mean,
really.
I get the gist of it, but at the end of the day, we gotta still keep some kind of cap on it
Right.
of some sort.
And over the last couple years, you haven't hit your 110 either. I mean, you were over in 19, in 20, you were at 148.
And that's sort of 3 years ago, I asked for the actuals, because the actuals will
Yeah.
tell you what you're spending, and that's so
Yes.
important of a budget, and, that's why I wanted to see it this year, because
Yeah.
if you can see that it's a pattern, and if you
Mm-hmm.
can see that, you can say, you know what, I don't need 80,000, I only need 40,000
Right.
there, and, it's like, I'm not saying the department heads are doing that, but you can use that as a slush fund throughout the year, when you got a big balance at the end of the year.
Right.
I mean, a budget should be a budget, I mean, you gotta have some, leeway there, but.
And budgets should be realistic. We can set it at 110 all we want, but we've blown that budget for several years now. I mean, last year, we were at 148. So really, your criminal was up last year, but we have not really been paying as close of attention to developing a realistic budget, or maybe setting priorities or guidelines. We've just been saying 110, but not meeting that, and that's really not helpful for you or the public or your administrator either.
What have we spent in this year?
This year,
Yeah.
we are at 179 projected. I projected it out. I'd have to take some of that off to see where we are right now.
Well, actually, are we over that budget now of
Yeah.
110?
Yes, I think so. Let me,
I think by May, we were over that.
Yeah. Well, I
In
guess the
June.
part that I don't quite understand, like any of the other departments, when they're gonna do something, if they're over their budget, it comes back to us. So if we're over this, to get them more money, if we're over the legal budget now, how come it hasn't been brought up that we're over it?
you've been over it every year for the last 3
past
That's
years.
what you're saying, but it's
And-
never been.
That was
it never
past
seems-
city administrators.
Well,
I mean,
yeah,
I can't,
know. Past ones, but now you're
Well,
the administrator
okay,
this year.
but for me, I would have to come
Yeah,
tell you what I think might be coming up and how much time I think it might take.
Yeah,
And then it could be 2 weeks before we could start something. That's not really realistic.
well, I'd say the realistic part would come and say, we're gonna have a lot more legal
The
expenses.
thing about it is,
we're
if you
gonna
put the
raise
actuals on there, it tells you in May and June where you
Yeah.
are. I mean, that's the big part of having the actuals on there.
Right.
And that's why
Yes.
I'm such an advocate of that,
And
because
we're
you can
working-
tell you're over way before you're over. I mean,
Yep.
or
Yes.
you can be able to fix it before it gets too bad or whatever. I mean, if I run my budget like this, without the actuals on there, I would have no idea what I'm doing. I
And
mean,
we do run revenue and expense reports. This year, we are still waiting on a finalized 2020 audit. So that, there's adjusting journal entries. We've been waiting on that, and I do have a report I'm gonna pull for you that shows 2020 actuals. I just wanna make sure we get everything in there. But that is, we used 2019, 2020, and year-to-date 2021 as we went through all of these budgets. And there were some things that are, and I'm gonna talk about them here in a bit, that were really challenging.
And you can tweak the numbers however you want to make it look good, but it's not the actual. That's, to me, it's like, over the years, without having that number, you have no idea.
Right.
And like you said, it's been at 110 for 5 years, and we've gone 140, 150, 160. That's not an actual. I mean,
Right.
to me, it's, that's probably our bad for not,
Well, and it
figuring
depends
that
on,
out as whoever your finance director, whatever, that's their job to say, hey.
right.
you know.
And it's our job as full-time staff to provide you relevant information, to make good decisions and be informed. And that's what I hope we are doing this year through this budget process. It's been, Ryan and I have uncovered or learned a lot of things. The department heads have been very helpful in really drilling down in their budgets and helping us understand what each line item is for. And so even next year, we're already talking about some things that will hopefully be even more helpful to you and the public. Okay, we'll come back and take a look at this. We'll bring this one back next week and just talk a little bit more about that one. Okay, so next, you guys have some handouts in front of you. Chad, would you put up the first one for me on the screen, please? I think the first one that let me make sure it's what I thought I was asking for. Yeah, okay, so you guys have this in front of you. The 2022 budget worksheet is what it's titled at the top. What we've done here is shown you each fund, and some of the funds that are not budgeted funds we're not addressing here, maybe the grant funds, things like that. The ones in yellow are your levied funds. And then there's a reserve column that has numbers that are in orange. So the numbers in bold are your totals for your fund, and then in the gray, we've just broken out by department for you for a visual. Let's start with general fund. What you're seeing there is the estimated expenditures as of, I think we ended on Friday afternoon. So everything that we've done up through Friday afternoon and then verified back to our reporting systems and Tyler Encode to make sure we've input everything. Your general fund is set right now with expenditures at 6.3 million. Your non-property tax receipts are estimated at 1.4 million. That puts an over-under, so we're under by 4.9 million. And as we move across, I have 250,000 in reserves there, and I will come back and talk about that here in just a second. From that, it shows you your balance that still needs funding, your local government aid, your total tax levy. Your regular tax levy there in the yellow is what is going to compute down to the total levy at the bottom. The general fund does receive some tax abatement dollars back throughout the year. That's both the county and the school share, so that offsets that a little bit there. As we move down, there's a couple of these I want to make sure and talk about. Next is our intermediary relending program. If you'll see there, in the reserve line, that shows a credit of 1,610. That fund is estimated to put that amount into reserves. Right below that, you see Valley Tech Park. As we looked at earlier, that fund is scheduled then to put 19,260 in reserves based on estimated expenditures and revenues. I do want to talk about Fund 210, the Special Service District. You'll see expenditures there, but no revenues coming in. So that is set to pull from reserves in the same amount as the expenditures. And I want to talk about that a little bit. I just have to find my notes here. This fund used to collect a fee that was designed to build the reserve in this fund. It sunsetted in 2017. We were bringing in a little over 400,000 to that account. In speaking with our accountant and some of our past and longtime staff, it was designed that way. Right now, this fund is carrying a reserve balance of 3.6 million. Out of this fund, our Public Works Director, part of his salary is expensed to this line. And the idea was to collect and build up the reserve, and at a time when that reserve needs to be replenished, then the discussion to re-implement a fee would be had at that time. So I wanted to talk about that one because it showed no revenues, but there are expenditures that we'll continue to see in there. Primarily out of salaries. Okay. All right, where are we next? Library is next. So estimated expenditures show $318,900. And then you will see that does carry over to your levy line. In this, because we are still waiting on estimates. Uh-oh, I lost a sticky note. Oh, there it is. We're still waiting on estimates from contractors on the most appropriate way to handle the roof situation. Oh, do you have, I don't have that in front of me.
The library roof you're talking about?
Yes, the library. Oh, okay. Here, we got organized today. What did we leave in there? What did we set that at? Was it 35? We had in that, in their other improvements line, I think it was 49,000, that included estimates for lighting, electrical, windows, and windows install. We made an adjustment, I believe we set it to, 35,000, and on the CIP, made the description be building and facility maintenance. At this moment, I don't know if that's going to mean windows. There's been discussion about possibly leaving the windows and creating a pitched roof above that. We wanted some flexibility there. There is currently about 30,000 in reserves for building improvements at the library that if we can, one, get a contractor and an estimate and someone that's available to do the work, we would certainly bring that to you to consider doing now. If not, we didn't want to be so specific in our CIP that we can't make an adjustment if that means a roof or windows or both. So we made that adjustment, and then hopefully soon we will have someone over there to look at that and that has availability then to do the work for us, or we'll have to
Well, I think no matter what, the roof needs to be fixed first, because if your roof is shot, the rest of it's gonna get shot.
Right,
So
and that's what they're
fix the
looking
roof
at, the
and get it
rubber
done.
roof, and there's other parts of the roof that need repaired, so determining if everything needs to be done at once, if pitching it above is best, that's what we're kind of waiting on, some expert opinions
That
on.
was kind of our discussion last time, make sure that we're not doing something that is just a quick fix, but in the end has to be redone.
Right, and
So-
our challenge has been getting someone over there, and then no one has time to do the work right now. So
Is
that's
this-
gonna be,
Is this something that can be taken out of municipal land and buildings?
it could, yeah.
You know, I'm just saying that would be 30,000 off of
Yeah,
off of your budgeted item right now. I mean, if you,
Yes, it would, however, she had some lighting in there too, and we were trying not to completely take away
that lighting has gotten wet in there, but that's not a big.
the outside lighting.
Oh, she
The,
was.
the
yeah.
outside lighting. So we were trying to be flexible where we could still consider that. Does that mean after our discussions tonight, we won't have to come back to that? We may, certainly have
but
to.
that's where I guess I look at it, you know, we've done all this interior work on that building, when we should have done the exterior first.
I mean, that would have made sense to me, but,
Me too, you know, but it's always, well, we patched it now, so now we'll do the interior. We should have fixed the outside first, and let's get that done, and then we can worry about some new lighting that's maybe better. And this-
I don't disagree with that at all. Yeah, I just don't know right now I don't know what that recommendation is gonna be.
Well, now it's came down to emergency.
Well,
Now it's
yes.
definitely emergency. It has to be fixed. We put all that money into the inside. It has to be fixed, but we also want to make sure that we're doing it properly.
Right.
We can't, like I said last time, we can't, you know, everybody's like, well, it's emergency. I got that. But because we're under an 8 ball doesn't mean you want to do something twice or do this portion, which isn't going to fix this portion. So we need to make sure we're doing it correctly. And I understand
Yeah.
at the time of year we're at, it's going to be difficult because people
Well,
are
and-
under the gun with the winter coming.
Well,
and
yeah, the tarp will
will
not
make
help
it over the
us
winter either.
in a few months. So we need to do something, and Brandon and Greg both have been working and trying to get people there, and the availability is not great, but, yeah. Okay, the next one you have there is Parks and Recreation. I'm gonna pull up my, estimated expenditures across the entire Parks and Recreation Fund, which include the breakouts there underneath in the gray, are 3.6 million. Estimated revenues, non-tax, revenues are 1.7 million, leaving about 1.8 unfunded. Your Parks and Rec Fund historically and in this budget receives a large portion of your property tax. So I do have plugged in 385,000 to come from reserves. As we continue to discuss this budget, I've already mentioned to you, there are some challenges in here. We are trying our very best in some of these recommendations for reserves to do the things we've committed to do and help relieve the property tax the best we can. I'm not a huge proponent of using reserves for operating costs. I think that's a slippery slope. We've tried to address things that were more one-off type things. This, actually, last year was budgeted, I believe, 400,000 from reserves. For that reason, I believe it did not poll, but I felt that would be a reasonable request.
What was the actual pull off the reserves last year? Do you have
On
that?
Parks and Rec, I don't think it did
Or
poll.
total?
Total of everything?
Yeah, I mean, we can't be close to even touching it, will we?
I'd have to check on that.
There's something for,
Okay.
because when
Can
you're
you write
throwing out
that
a
down?
number like this to see if we did 400 last year to kind of.
I don't, it was budgeted to pull 400 last year, but I think because the campground project didn't start, I don't believe it did. I think it actually put into. And I'll have to check because some of the reserves are split into like a designated reserve line, but I can check on that and see where we landed on that.
Be a good number to see.
I do want to talk a little bit about Parks and Rec. We worked really hard. I think I mentioned to you guys at the last meeting when we went through Parks and Rec, that is a huge budget. And we did notice that it often was budgeted to pull from reserves, but didn't always. So we went down and, let me see if I can find that.
So on this one, Amy, downtown square, is that just for the payment rent of it? Is that taken care of, or is that everything?
I think that's mainly salaries that are charged there. Brandon spoke to that a little bit last time.
Yeah, he did, I can't remember what he said.
I think he said it was the watering staff. Does that make the
They
most
paid-
sense?
Oh, that's
Not
right.
entirely, but,
No,
paid
like I
for the
said, I
flower
remember
Yeah,
that.
so-
I was just wondering, because, we talked, Wayne might even know, I don't even know what the purchase price was, maybe talked about at one point in time.
Well, that's,
It was
on
don't,
downtown
don't steal
square,
my
but-
thunder, that's coming up.
Okay.
Don't steal my thunder. It's coming up. Okay, let me see if I can, oh, I did that wrong. Okay, give me a minute here, I'm working on my, I just wanted to talk a little bit. One of the things that we did, remove from the Parks and Rec budget was the mower. That was a big ticket item. They are currently working on an inventory of equipment, which really is necessary when you're determining replacement schedules and those things.
But wasn't there still a mower in the Park and Rec? When you say we pulled a mower out because we purchased a slope one, didn't they have another one in there too?
Yes, they did, yeah. This one was for, in next year's budget, for 65,000. So that was one of the more significant ones. However, as we went through, the budgets, this one, because it's so large and it has so many activities within that fund and so many lines within each one, we took a critical look at it and we reset a lot of them back closer to actuals, tried to be conservative. There were some lines in there that hadn't been used in years, it appeared, and it might have only been $500 or $1,000, but as you see several of those, it does add up. So from the time that you saw this, we've made some significant reductions to this budget. Some of them were, the arena had, what was that? It had arena improvements, we reduced that by 5,000. The pool had, on their CIP, pool improvements, that was at 20,000, we reduced that to 10. We're just trying to be, leave room to take care of the things we need to, but get to where we need to be with the levy also. I do want to talk, so one thing we need to consider is the swimming pool. The city took it over in 2019, I believe, partway through the year. So 2020 was the first full year that the city operated the pool at a deficit of $227,000. That alone is 5.5% of your levy, and we didn't adjust our levy really to account for that. So that didn't go away. This year projected deficit of about 173,000, that's 4.2% of the levy. So we need to keep those things in mind. That's new. That's a new burden on the budget. In all my years of working, I've never heard of a municipal pool that's a moneymaker. The arena also carries a burden on our levy. So in 2020, the arena accounted for about 8.1% of the total levy. This 2022 budget right now is projected at 10.6. So those things are expensive to operate, and while we are making every effort to increase our revenues, our pool, actually revenue is up, and that's great, but we're not going to probably bring in enough revenue to completely offset the operation of the pool. Same with the arena. We can try to close the gap, and we should, but just those two things alone, and especially with the pool being new, are things we have to consider when we're really wishing we could stay.
Something like the pool, it's swimming, it's that type of stuff. It's not a broad range, where that arena eventually could be a broad range.
Agreed, we're working
And
towards
bring in
that.
more revenue. It's, once we get going and keeping it more full than just hockey or just.
Agree, I'm just not sure the arena will ever break 644 or even 450,000. That would be awesome.
Even
but-
at things like the pool with the gal that was here earlier and her advertising everything. I had a kid out to the university the other night, and I mentioned the pool to him. You got a pool in this town?
Yeah.
I mean, so
Yeah,
things like that would help
right.
increase the revenue too.
Yeah. One adjustment, I need to go back up here too. One adjustment that I did make, was when we were working through, and we've already done a significant amount of reductions just with staff before we're here tonight. Some of them were to these budgets that you saw after we reduced, some of them have been to the ones you saw. In fairness to our staff, and because I believe when we are setting our budget, we need to be setting our budgets with the priority services and community services that the city should be providing in mind. With that said, I did remove from our levied funds the Golden Link request for a $20,000 towards their freezer. And then out of the council budget, which is where we had placed some other requests, we did remove DCDP's $14,500. In my opinion, as we continue to talk tonight and to talk about the levy and where we are, I do believe that it would not be the most responsible decision to talk about additional park benches, trash cans, or providing equipment for another entity when we have some pretty severe needs ourselves. And so that's my reasoning behind that. It is not in any way to be punitive, but to try to really bring the focus back on what we are obligated to provide to the community and the citizens. Okay. One challenge, and I'm gonna put something up for you on the wall here in a minute, is we've had a significant loss in our investment portfolio income. We are required to book that as if we had to liquidate everything today, and you have to book it at the value of the dollar today. That is driven by Federal Reserve rates, interest rates, and they are not looking good. We are about, year-to-date, last year, as of July, we had booked over 200,000 in investment portfolio income. Year-to-date today, we have booked negative 31,292. That is a huge swing that affects us across all budgets. So that is one of those challenges that I've spoken of. That's been, we will see, like in our improvement fund, there's several that we weren't comfortable leaving that investment portfolio income budgeted when we are not confident that that will be coming in. We hope it does and we can exceed that, but didn't want to count on that. The airport, we did go back in and there was $45,000 in the budget to resheet the hangar in 2022. It was actually in this year's budget, but did not get done because of cost of materials. It is our intent then to reserve that money that was unspent so that that can be used in the future, and removed $45,000 from that budget to alleviate, the airport, as you can see, is a levied fund. So that alleviated a little bit of the burden on the levy. Municipal land and building 401, it's down a little bit towards the bottom. If you'll look in there, I did plug in 65,000 in the estimated expenditures column. We would like to, with you, after we gather some information, begin the discussion of possibly purchasing the land that the Red Barn sits on. That lease will be expiring, I think, next year. Does that sound right?
No.
There's
We got a
another-
10-year lease and then another 10-year lease.
I think we are,
Is there still another 10-year lease on that?
I think it's about to
It'll be
expire.
down to 9, I think.
9 years.
9? I'm only seeing one lease.
No, there should be one and then
And an
a
option with
option to
another
redo
10.
it again.
Oh, an option, that's probably why it's not showing up.
Well, and did you already take the option? Because it hasn't expired yet.
Then it must be 10, we're at 10 then.
Yeah.
So
So,
anyway, we can lease it for another 10 after the first 10.
Yeah,
is that what you want to do?
I would say so, because,
Well, we tried to buy just that area, but they wanted.
And right now, if we'd have bought that and sold that building for what Cheetah sold it, we'd have been in pretty good shape, wouldn't we?
Do you not want us to explore that option? Is,
they wanted us to buy the whole
The old
building.
gymnasium,
Yeah.
and that's,
well, that wasn't what I had in mind.
Well, I think we can buy the downtown square at this point because we kind of exhausted one of their option of moving, trying to move it, do some other things. I think for that being called our downtown square, it makes the most sense to buy it. That's in my opinion.
we wanted to buy it, but we had to take the old gymnasium with it.
Right.
Right, but if we don't, I said
But
if we
that-
don't have to do that, we can buy just that area where the downtown square
Was that,
is.
was that discussion at 10 years ago?
No, that was just a few years ago.
Two,
2 years?
three at the most.
You know that $350,000 everybody's talked about? That was supposed to have purchased the downtown square and a couple other properties. And for whatever reason, that's when I got done on council, or on mayor, and I asked Craig about that. And he said that the council voted it down, that they wouldn't do it. And I never saw where it ever came up to a council vote.
I think it
That's
would
when
be,
he, that's when I asked to go talk to him, and he said, don't muddy the
So,
waters.
am
That's
I
off
here-
the record.
Do you not want me to explore that?
I think it would be nice to explore it.
You can explore it.
Okay,
I don't think it hurts to ask those questions again.
because the lease, when you renew, and I believe it's coming up for option, the rates will adjust based on taxes, and so
Gotcha.
I'm not sure what that'll look like, but we'll see
The
what we
the
can.
other thing though too is if they do tell you you have to take the gymnasium, just figure it out, and maybe we could find someone that would take the gymnasium for free and put in something that we're looking for.
Okay, I'll see what work I can get, and we'll come back to you.
I mean, that was a problem back when we were dealing on this, because he was giving it away until he found out we wanted it, then the price, I mean, that's one of those things where it gets out in the public, and now it's a very popular, expensive piece of land,
Yeah.
We'll
But
see what we
they
can
did get
find.
75 out of the other piece that,
right?
we'd have been in there in good shape.
That particular fund is not a levying fund, so if it's budgeted and not spent, it certainly won't hurt anything there. Okay, next is water. And that's at 601. If you'll go down to the operations line, and let me tell you, one, Pat Kelly ran such a lean budget that some of it wasn't very practical. Brandon did a very, very good job going through. He based most of his adjusted budget lines on prior 2-year actuals, looking at estimated costs of things, so he really did not have a lot of wiggle room there. We are set to pull from reserves $235,000 for operations. To me, that indicates we need to take a hard look at rates. Brandon has mentioned that as well. He's done some preliminary work on that, so that is work we will begin doing so that we can be talking to you about rates in the 2022 calendar year as early as possible to try to start recovering some of those reserve dollars. And then if you go down to 602, you will see something similar. Operations for wastewater right now are set to pull 76,000 from reserves. That's another area we just need to take a look at rates and make sure that we're covering our cost of operation and expenses. Central Garage 701, our revenue in this line, I know it looks really bad, but I think this is the one that has all those big equipment in it. We are waiting on, talk to some bankers to see if we could get some quotes on lease purchase. Brandon's getting some quotes on leases, so we think that number will actually reduce. We just have the full amount of the motor grader and the 1-ton pickup in there right now. However, this is one of the funds that had a big hit in revenue. We have run short in staff in the Public Works Department for quite some time. Less people meant less people operating equipment, and that's how those revenues are put back into the central garage, based on the hours that we operate some of our equipment. So that took about $100,000 hit this year. We adjusted budget to that, again, not a budgeted fund, does have reserves in there, but we are hoping that now that we're back to full complement in Public Works, that we'll start working back up to that more regular revenue amount as we get people trained and going. I do want to mention, up under general fund, the Public Works Department, you're seeing estimated expenditure at 1.268. That does have some revenues for that. It is up in the total. one of the things we discovered was the revenue for garbage collection was increased $130,000+ based on the assumption that rates would be raised, and they were not. So that fund also, the general fund took a hit to budget appropriately because there was no garbage rate increase, which means that revenue's not coming in, $130,000. In my calculations, 1% of the levy equals about $41,000. So $130,000 hit on revenue in a levying fund is big, and that hurt. And so did some of the revenue that we've lost on our investment portfolio. Those are some of the challenges as we worked through getting over those humps and trying to meet needs and make reductions. I do want to talk a little bit more about the reserve amount plugged in for general fund at 250. Let me get over here real quick. When Chad talked to us about the IT budget, there were a lot of things in there that we really do need to do. A lot of them carried a one-time implementation cost with them. That included the broadband, getting it to city facilities. 65,000. Can you remind me what that was?
Site
Oh, yeah.
reimplementation and the Office 365 migration.
Okay, yes. So 65,000 total was website redesign and then Microsoft Office 365 migration. $3,600 out of 0433.
Information quick.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Answer that here for you.
And then 3 Axon cameras for 8,500 for the police department. So those one-time, one-off costs, if you will, totaled almost 116,000. We tried to just offset some of that burden on the levy, getting us where we need to be. Can you show me that? Oh, antivirus upgrade was the 3,600. Thank you. The other, that left 134,200 to get to the 250. We have made some pretty steep cuts already and need some support from reserves and added a little bit in there to take some off of the levy. The general fund can sufficiently support that amount. We're at, I think, 2.9 million, last time I pulled trial balance. So, at the your regular tax levy at the bottom, in the yellow, is 2.64 million. That's where we are right now as the budgets are entered. So some of them, you saw today that we've already applied cuts to. Some of them we've talked about that we've gone back and made some reductions. Chad, will you go ahead and put up that number 2 for me? Just wanted to give you a visual. The next one is it's an investment portfolio value. It just showed from 2016 to 21. In the year-to-date column, in 2019, we booked 347,000. 2020, 227,000. This year to date, we are at a negative 31,000. You don't have that one in front of you, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, no, I didn't print that one, I'm sorry. So that's just to show you that that is a significant hit also. That's not all hitting your levying funds, but it is impacting funds across the board for the city. We're having discussions, we're talking about it, but right now, it kind of is what it is, and so we did not count for a whole lot of that coming in next year. Okay, Chad, number 3, please. The last sheet you guys have in front of you kind of has the columns in gray and white. What we show you here is impact on households at a 4% increase up to 12. Where you're sitting right now and what you see is 12. And if we can just go down to that column, on a home, let's pick the 150,000 column, so right in the middle there under home value on the top left, if you go all the way over to the right, your increase, your annual impact at 12% increase on a $150,000 household is $813.61. Monthly, that equates to almost $68. Down below that, you've got some increases, so if you look in that middle column again, this increase shows you increase over the 4%. So instead of 4%, if you were at 12, that's an additional $70.48 increase over 4% annually. Monthly, that equates to $5.87 impact on a $150,000 household per month. So I just wanted to show you that. We've got down below a couple of commercial values. They are taxed at a little bit different tax rate. So we wanted to show you that. I'm not going to focus quite so much on that, but it is there for you to see. I do not believe that 4% or 5 or 6 is adequate for what we're looking at this year. And keep in mind, if we're at 12% now, if we got down to 8, we need to cut another 160,000. My concern is being able to make those cuts without affecting city services. And I would like some feedback from you, or if you're not ready to give that yet, I know it's alarming. When we first started, and we did ask our department heads to put in what they thought they needed in their budgets, we were at probably, with the hits on the income lines, we were probably at 25 to 30%. So we have made already significant cuts to things that we think we can either defer, do less, phase in. We were hosting a Zoom call with MnDOT last week, and the burden of the Zoom call here at City Hall was too much for our network to handle. So there's things in our IT budget that we really can't do without, or we're not gonna be able to function. And I'm not just talking Zoom calls, that means our police department and our fire station and our ability to run our software. Can you give me some feedback?
For just simple wise, I mean, we just talked about spending $8,500 on a program, an app, but yet we can't buy a freezer for old folks thing that we, to me, that just, we just, all talked about tonight. I mean, if we're gonna have budgets like this, we can't go buy a $10,000 app. I mean, to me, that would be totally irresponsible. I mean, I look at the business side of this, and I look at my building, $2,577 at 12%, I mean, that's not good business either. I mean, the business downtown are not killing it by any means, and that's the one I would really like to protect, is to keep what we have, but I mean, we can't throw taxes like that. If we can't buy apps for $10,000, we can't buy, like I said, you cut the freezer or whatever, well, it's a lot of elderly, require, depend on that for their lunches and dinners. I mean, I just, it's one of those things that we really gotta buckle down. I mean, and my other point of this, is it something, I know the IT and this and that is very important, everything's important, I get that, but at the end of the day, instead of doing a huge levy, can we do it in 2 years, and hopefully LGA stays the same, and hopefully get a boost, or, I just think we're taking a huge bite here.
Well, a lot of the IT expenses we did offset with a reserve. So there's so much going on with this budget. There were line items, I've mentioned this to you before, line items that showed zero budget, and that looks real good on your sheet when you're setting your levy. But when we talk about actuals, they had actual expenditures every single year. I could have left those at zero for you, and I could have shown you a nicer budget. But that's not realistic. We're down income, we have realistic expenses. I'm not suggesting to you that you stay at 12,000, or 12%. I understand that 2,500 for a business is a lot, But I also want to talk about, and this is for us in this room and it's for the public. If I'm a homeowner at $150,000 and I have an $813.61 impact from the city, with that, I have police and fire service, I have water, I have a toilet that flushes and goes where it's supposed to go, I have streets that are swept and plowed and maintained and repaired, I have dike maintenance, no one thinks about that, but we certainly all want our dike in working order during high water. We have pest control. We get complaints about mosquitoes and we send a truck out and spray. We have street lights. We have garbage and recycle collection. We replace boulevard trees out of our levied fund. And I think we should do that if they're damaged. We pay for election services so that we have polling places for our citizens to go. We have maintained parks. We have recreation programs. We have a pool and an arena, and we help support our library. That's a lot of things, and I'm not suggesting we can't come back and cut more. What I am telling you is if we try to get back down to 4%, we're gonna be talking about some really tough things in here. And we just talked about our pool is between 4 and 5% of the levy that no one ever accounted for when we took on a whole new facility to operate. That's important, it's real. It's real, and I did not see a reflection in that in the levy increases over the last couple of years, which means it's still not really being addressed yet.
And the other concern on this is, we're an elderly community too, and we gotta watch out for that too, for somebody that's on social security, even at $100,000 home, $38 is a lot of money, for somebody on social security, and I mean, it's one of those things that, and do they use all the services? Probably not, but we still gotta take care of that end of the spectrum too. I mean, yeah, there's some really nice houses, and some need workhouses, but people got different incomes and whatever, and I just think that the elderly to the, people with good jobs, it doesn't matter, but you gotta protect both ends of the spectrum on this, and I don't know. I knew this was gonna be a bad deal from day one when we started looking at the numbers. I knew it was gonna be, one of those things that's gonna be probably in the 7 years I've been on this council, it's gonna be the hardest budget we've ever done. And I don't think that we overlooked anything in the past years. I think it was our lack of information that should have been given to us.
I agree.
From day one, and
I
we
agree
never
with that.
got that.
Yeah.
But we kept, all we were doing is kicking the can down the road, 3%, 3%, 3%. Last year, we wanted 5, and we settled at 4.5. I mean,
That's what I'm saying, do
Over
we do
the
a
years,
happy
we knew
medium?
it was catching up. We knew it was
Right.
gonna catch up, just like we knew when Phil didn't order anything with IT. When he didn't bump his up, you knew that was
Right.
gonna catch up to you and bite you. And that's what's happening now with trying to keep it at 3 instead of hitting it at 5 and then 3, or, doing some bouncing. I mean, it's easy to say it, I know it's tough to actually put it out there, but yeah, now you're looking at reality here of, do you bail yourself out with reserves? Or do you, come to the realization that you're gonna have to jack it up, because next year it ain't gonna be any
Well,
different.
and reserves are gonna go away if
Right.
every year the answer.
the deal is I don't think we used reserves last year, do we?
No, that's the key to this thing of, because I know we did allocate 400,000 reserves, and I would guarantee we didn't touch a dime of that, and that's
You
not just because of
didn't,
the
right,
park.
that's,
But-
well,
But the years before, when we were doing 3%, we always borrowed from reserves too.
but it's never going back in.
Right.
I mean, if every, listen, I am not telling you we can't reduce more. I'm not telling you that. We've already had some discussions internally about, are there things we can phase? We are prepared to have those discussions at staff level, but I wanted to be realistic with you. What we've done right now and what we've already cut and shown you with supports in the budget, we're at 12%. I did not believe you were all gonna go, green stamp, go. I did not think that, but I think it's unfair to come to you and say we're at 8% and then have you ask me to get down to 6 when that could really pose a problem for us. I wanna be realistic with you that it is my hope that I don't want to impact services or programs. We're working hard. We have to change some rates, but we can't, we could do it today, and it's not going to help you for your budget because we got to get this, we can't project that for your budget if we don't know what that's going to look like yet. So,
I think we also have to look at both the business side and the residential side. We just came through 2 years of pandemic, and people either not working, the business are now starting to get opened up and get going again. We're gonna have to do some cuts, because we can't hit them at 12%.
I don't disagree, and we can. I need to know from you where you're remember, we are setting the max. My concern is, we set a max low, and by December, that you're gonna ask for lower, and that could be really tough on some of our budget. So I wanna be realistic, and I wanna be honest with you, and I would like to hear from you where you're comfortable setting the max levy. We have to have this completed for you in final form on September 27th, and this looks nice and tidy here, but the work to get here isn't.
Like you say, I'd love to be at 5, but I don't think that's gonna be realistic. But, I wouldn't wanna be at the end any more than 7.
At the very end, you'd want to be at 7?
Yeah, I wouldn't wanna be any more than that. Not this year, we're gonna have to do some cuts.
Well, we plan to.
Yeah.
That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
So what they're saying, Tom, is if we set it at 10
Yeah,
for preliminary, with the hopes of getting down to 6.5 or 7,
yeah.
would be
But
more realistic.
But at 8%, she's talking 160,000 in cuts.
Well,
Yeah,
I think the reality here is that there's been a lot of infrastructure things that have been kicked down the road, as we've mentioned here a couple times. And if the basics and the things that are such a necessity cannot be addressed, I think that's a pretty significant issue. And I understand that, we do have issues with possibly raising the rates on businesses and homeowners. But in the end of the day, like, this is because we have deferred maintenance, and I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. There's a lot that people just did not know. We were not made aware of until this time. And so I don't think this is necessarily going to be an every year thing, but I think we also need to keep that in mind, the amount of things that are falling off walls at this point, or that are not sustaining the city or are not providing safety. And when we're talking numbers, we can't talk about it ambiguously. We need to talk about it as if, what is it that we're willing to give up for the percentage? I also do wonder is, if we do set it at a larger, higher levy at this point, we still have those relief dollars that are being released to the city and to the county. And I wonder if also we take it upon ourselves to try and see where in the current infrastructure that we're lacking, that maybe some of those can come into play and cover some of those expenses. But I think the reality here is there's a lot of things that cannot be deferred one more year.
Do we have any big tax bases like Titan just came on last year, right? We don't have any big one that's gonna make a,
I don't believe so. Our net tax capacity preliminary is up $90,000. That helps. That helps us.
that's one house.
that's where these businesses are coming
Not
in that
even.
we all want to come into Crookston and pay,
So-
that's what your tax levy is.
So how does that venture in there? You're saying the tax base went up $90,000.
I'd have to ask the county how they calculated that.
Because you look at the number of homes that have been put in around there, and they all had a 2-year abatement or whatever. Are any of them coming off? Is Titan coming off? Have we gotten paid back for our roads and stuff that are state aid? I mean, is there monies out there that we're not accounting for here?
I'm not seeing anything. I can look again, but all I saw really was challenges with revenues being set that were never adjusted to bring that in. Our investment portfolio's down. I am not implying to this group or to the public that we can't come back and get deeper, but we put a lot of work now, and I thought it was important to bring this to you and be realistic. Getting to 7% is over 200,000 in cuts. out of your levied funds. That's general, parks and rec, library, and airport.
Well, you take your library, if we take that first 35 out of municipal land and buildings, there's your jump start.
I think,
And I know at the airport, that garage has been in there for I don't know how many years, and we've taken it out. I know he'd like to have a garage at the house for his car, but I'm sure, you know.
I don't think we left that in. That's out.
That's out?
We've already taken out things that we thought were easily to do without. We did move some things in collaboration with Brandon to the ARPA funds for some of his sanitary sewer, lift station improvements, those types of things. Those have already been moved over. I certainly don't want to give the impression that we have not already gone and done a second swipe through. Let me find for you, we were talking about land and building.
Can you do that for us, though, for next Monday, is go through and take the swipes out that you have, so that we know what's still in the budget?
We've already, what you're seeing, those are out.
We've already cut.
They're already reduced.
Well, the library, where's that?
We reduced them, they had a $49,000 CIP, and that's at 35 now in their capital improvement plan.
But what we've gone through here, you've already went through there and taken some of the stuff out, is what you're saying?
All the things we've talked about today
So,
that
like,
we've
what we went
reduced,
over tonight has already been sifted through?
yes. We will go back through, we planned on doing it. I'm nervous about setting our max levy at like 7. I need,
Well, you can set the max at any you want, but it's where we're trying to get to. You know,
right,
I mean,
but
You set it
between,
too high, you're gonna stir the natives up.
well, right, I mean, people.
Which might be good, but it's,
between now and December, the same data that we have in front of us today will be the same that we have to carve out $200,000. So it gives us a little bit more time to work on that, but it doesn't change,
So where are you, okay, rather than the 12, were you comfortable to set the, say, the levy, the one we gotta do now?
where we'll land at the end
No, right now,
for max.
yeah, you gotta set a maximum now. Okay, so are you looking at what, 8, 9, 10, or the 12, or what do you think that we should set it, and then we go from there?
Well, I guess I kind of need to know, I really need a good understanding of where you need us to land.
Honestly, I mean, in my own opinion, I don't see it going over 10 as a max. I mean, honestly, you can't have more than $100 a month, that's $1,200 a year.
Yeah.
I mean, we've never seen numbers like that in 20 years, honest.
But that doesn't mean that was a good decision.
No, but at the end of the day, what's the county gonna do? Are they in the same
Well,
predicament?
Thief River
What
Falls
the
is
school
that-
district gonna do? What is
We
the-
don't know that. And
Right.
here's the thing, what they are making their decisions on are completely different than what you are making yours on.
Yeah.
I don't agree with, I don't think keeping your levy so low that it's harming your operations should be a badge of honor. Small incremental increases, this should be a correction year, and next year might be also. I don't believe it will be at this level, but at some point, somebody and some board and some council has to decide it's time to start getting where we need to be.
I think we gotta look at some point in time, we can't rely on LGA forever either. I mean, if it's gonna get to the point where that's gonna get chiseled
Right,
and chiseled,
but
and then what
keeping
do we
your
do?
levy low isn't moving you towards that. Angel talked about that when I was here. She tried to get you to pass a higher levy to reduce your reliance on LGA, and you cut down to 4%.
Right.
You can't, if you want us to move towards something, you have to then give us the ability to do that for you.
Well, that's why I say, I think if we've been sticking down here at the 3 and 4%, if we go up to say even 7, that is increasing. I mean, we're moving up.
Yes.
But to all of a sudden say, well, we're gonna go up to 10 and try and catch up, you can't catch it up on a years like these here. I mean, there's just
I-
too much.
I also think we need to stop talking about percent and need talking about what the actual necessity is. And if we could keep or set it at, I don't know, 10 or 11 right now, and then see what it is that Amy would have to and the departments would have to do to get to that, and what we're willing to actually take out of the budget, and not talk a bit about it in this percentage kind of ambiguous space over here, but what are we giving up for that, I think is a bigger conversation, and it's probably the more educated conversation about our decision, right? We want to make an educated decision. We don't want to just say percentage. We don't want to say we don't want to have people have more than $100 in levy. I think what we need to really address is like, what are we giving up by cutting or making it at 6% or 8% or 10%? I think those are the conversations that need to be had. And I think what we're relying on our very competent staff to do is tell us what are those things that we absolutely need to have in order to make this city work and function the way it should.
I think you gotta really keep numbers in there, because that's what the people that hired or elected all of us is want numbers. They want, you know, our job is to run the city as efficient as we can. Well, doing a 12% levy at $900 a month or whatever is not efficient.
And I'm not suggesting to you that we land at 12. I didn't for 1 second believe that's what you would want, but it's realistic right now. That's 12% after we asked staff to make reductions, we asked staff to give up equipment, and I went through line by line and haven't left my office truly, except for lunch with Ryan. I've got red marks, this blue folder. We are not taking this lightly. I'm not suggesting that you go 12%.
What are you suggesting then?
To end at?
Yeah.
That's not our decision. That's our decision.
But I think the thing is that I'm not saying we don't rely on numbers. By no means am I saying that. But what I think people are focusing on is just this one little percent and not talking about anything that's in the budget that correlates to us cutting those percentage points, right? So I think the conversation needs to be had. What is it that your 9%, 8%, whatever percent levy is getting you? And if someone comes to me and said, I can't believe my levy is X, Y, and Z, that every one of us should be able to articulate why it is that we have that budget, why we're providing this, why is it needed for this city. I understand that we need to be running efficiently, but in order to run efficiently, sometimes these bigger costs happen. And maybe this big cost wouldn't have happened if we were not kicking the can down the road. And maybe this is a good learning point for us in the future. And maybe this is a correction year, but every one of us should be able to articulate at the end of the day, whatever we land on is because of a certain percentage that is needed by the city. So I'm not saying that we don't take those into account. I think numbers are super important. And I think that we need to be very fiscally responsible, but we also need to make the most educated decision when it comes down to this. And that's gonna be based on what is needed, what is gonna make our city go. And so I think, you know, depending on what we decide here, or maybe we say, Amy, what is the bare bones that you guys can run on, and make sure that things aren't falling off walls and that we have the appropriate infrastructure for the Wi-Fi in our city that we can go forward. Maybe that needs to be the better question here at this point. And yes, it is the city council's responsibility for that percentage, but what does that correlate to? What are we giving up and what are we providing for that levy ultimately?
One also comes along with responsibility. We took over a municipal pool, and it is 5% of the levy that was never accounted for in your budgeting. But we are responsible for that. The city took over the ownership and operation of the pool, and I can assure you that the small lease payments that we receive from the two educational entities in the community do not come close to making that up. So that's.
Shouldn't that be better on a normal year, though? I would hope that COVID, 2020 was COVID, so it was closed 90% of the time. You know, when we first got that, I looked at the numbers on that thing, and the potential revenue sources were, you know, it was never gonna make money, but it was gonna offset it pretty well, which it was adjustable to.
To offset your expenses at the pool, you have to bring in $246,000 worth of income. We're
When Shannon sold
projected,
that to us, that was a pretty rock solid, it's like, okay, you know, this is.
well,
coming
I'm gonna
in, this
pull
is
some
coming in.
minutes, because I'm missing something.
Yeah,
And
because
we have,
it was not that far off the mark of cash.
it's an
flowing.
old pool.
Right, we knew that we had to have some up investments, but I said, like I was saying about
I
the.
mean, we're projected
income
at
coming, you know.
73,200 income for 2022, and I was real excited about that. Compared to what we are at this year or the year before, but it is what it is. We took on an old building and pool operation that costs you 4.2% of your levy, which is $160,000 in levied dollars that we never accounted for in the levy, but it's in a levied fund. So there's some things that just, they exist now, and we have to find a way
What's
to.
your opinion on I mean, yeah, we got some work to do here, but at the end of the day, you know, we might have to do this over, you know, do a 4-year plan, 5-year plan maybe even to be realistic. I mean, you know, I don't know what the options are there, you better than I, but.
I wrote down that perhaps we can sit down now, know that I need to bring something back to you next week. And Monday's gone, so we have 4 work days to get something prepared for you. We can do our very best to prioritize what gets us to 11, 10, 9, 8. That is going to take all department heads and some staff below that, and probably the entirety of those 4 days for me to do. We can do our best to prioritize that and kind of let you know that's going to be difficult. Because typically when you start cutting and you're looking at 160,000, you start running budgets and you start marking up with red. So it's going to be difficult to get through these amounts of budgets and try to plug in, we can try that, maybe, we can try to maybe prioritize cuts, but the easy stuff, the capital items, the easy things to cut are cut. So it's not a matter of going, all your mowers are deferred and all your trucks, and there we are.
Well, yeah, and even like with the trucks and stuff, you know, rather than say, just cut it out, can you spread that? Take half of the truck out and do it in 2 years rather than 1. You know,
Well-
or maybe 3 years, you know. like
Yes,
Steve was saying,
if
try and do
it doesn't get cut out, and that's
Yeah.
historically what's happened, is that things, every year, it gets deferred, and then it never gets,
Well, that's what I'm saying, you know,
purchased.
try and set up a reserve for that item, that you're gonna get it in
And
2 or 3 years.
really,
rather
your
than 1.
central garage fund is your reserve for equipment, like
Yeah.
Public Works. That's where our large equipment is now. It's not hitting your levied fund.
Yeah.
So we have to focus on the library. There's not a lot to cut there. General fund will be our main focus. Parks and Rec.
Well, I think with that library, I mean, we've done the lighting or used that lighting we've got for, I don't know how many years.
I believe
If
it's
let's-
original.
Let's fix the roof and
I don't,
not worry about the lighting.
Well, I don't disagree with prioritizing the roof, and I hope I didn't send that message. I don't disagree with that. I would at least like to defer the lighting instead of just completely throwing it out because.
Right, well, defer it to next year or the year after, but I mean, get the roof fixed and.
The problem is, I don't know what the roof solution is.
Yeah.
So I've got 30,000 in reserves, and I'm a bit nervous because we got a preliminary quote in for pitching the roof, and it was over that. I'm hesitant, I can cut it out, I can cut everything out of her CIP, but if the roof costs more than that to fix, the money's gotta come from somewhere. We have about 700 and some thousand in municipal land and building reserves that we could pull from.
There's no way that you're gonna be able to fix that roof for 30 grand.
Right, that's my concern, and so we can
You'd be
shift
lucky
some
if
of
we can get
that.
it for double that with what's happening there. Cause I'm almost gonna guarantee they're gonna say roof and windows have to be
I think
replaced.
one of the concerns is that it's the rubber roof, and so we do have to contractors coming to take a look at that, but we just don't have that final yet, so I'm hesitant to wipe that completely out. We can shift it to municipal land and building.
Amy, can I just reconfirm here? So if someone has a house that's at $200,000 and we did do the 12%, that would be $100, almost $101, which would be $8.41 extra per
That
month.
would be how much, the 12% increase is $100.90 more than the 4% levy would be annually.
Okay,
So-
so it'd be an increase of $8.41 for somebody who owned a $200,000 house
Over 4%.
monthly, over the 4%, correct?
Yes, so,
So instead of 1,063, it would be 1,164.
right. And then just the other side is just splitting that monthly. And I just wanted to show you on the bottom three, just what annual and monthly impact shows you the increase for each one over 4%.
Okay,
And I would
So
have
the
put, I would have
increase-
put 3, but I didn't have enough room on my sheet.
sure. So the increase for a home that's
Right, and,
$200,000 is $8.41 more than they would normally pay in their levy per month, correct?
Christy, would you repeat that? I'm sorry.
So what you're saying though is that you added a 12% increase, your monthly cost for a $200,000 home would be $8.41 more per
No,
month.
your monthly cost would be at the top, would be $97.07.
Right,
Those
right.
bottom three, it would be $8.41 more a month than the 4% increase, 4% levy.
So the 1060.
Yes,
So on a 4% levy, the $200,000 home would pay $88.66 a month if you looked at it that way, and on a
Right.
12%, $97.07.
yeah, so it's $8.41 more.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. So that's the significant increase monthly.
Yes, that would be the highest that we show you here on home values.
Okay.
Well, what do you want to set the preliminary at?
Which you don't have to decide tonight, but it would be helpful for us to know what we're working towards, for sure.
We do some checking, though, I was curious of where we were with the reserve last year. I think we did 400,000, what the actual was on that.
Are you,
because-
are you talking about all the budgets?
Yeah, this was general, so the whole thing was, I think we're.
General
allocated-
fund or all funds?
All funds, yeah, because I think we put 400,000 off that, and we did a 4.5% levy.
4.5.
So, but we also did the 400,000 off reserves, right?
It was budgeted for
It
that.
wasn't for the park, it was for, I don't think so, I can't remember.
I looked at it, I will double
Because
check,
we
but,
thought to bring the reserves down, because, I mean, Kim, as our accountant, told us to bring, you guys got too much money to, that's why we bought down last year and only went with a 4.5, because it cash flowed, but at the end of the day, we didn't have a lot of this information that, over the last week, we found out that they were budgeting 100,000 and spending 200,000 the last 5 years or whatever.
I do show,
Which makes it
In-
really hard on a council to make a budget off fictitious numbers of.
I don't disagree. It makes it hard on your administrator and finance staff also to prepare this and get it ready for you. In the budget worksheet, which is similar to this one that you guys have.
Yep.
400,000 is plugged in to pull from park and recreation reserves. Now, that would reduce your impact on the levy, because that's a levied fund. So that's just, nothing was, on the spreadsheet I'm looking at that was prepared by former administration and finance director, nothing was scheduled to pull from general fund. Whether it did or not, depending on if it was a specific item, I'd have to go back and look at that. What other levying fund, Parks and
I
Rec?
mean, we were on the assumption every year that we pulled off reserves, that it was never spent. So it's like, when you get that information, it's like, okay, we pulled off, the year before, I think we pulled off 200,000, or whatever it was, and it's like, okay. And we still had, you know, at the end of the day, at the end of the budget cycle there, it was still like it was never taken out because it was never spent, which, you know, it's a number to fill in a gap is what it
Right.
is. And it's one of those things, if we never got to that gap, there's no reason to, you know, it's in there to balance the budget, and that's the only reason it was in there. So we weren't actually pulling 300,000 out of the,
I don't think so.
Right.
We did go through, I think we had 170,000 that we reduced from the Parks and Rec budget. One larger item was the mower, but the majority of that was just going line by line. That's a lot. I mean, that right there is 4% of,
Doesn't that mower, doesn't that come out of the special service district?
not the mower
slope
that's
mower.
already bought. That did, yes.
That did this new one, no? I thought,
The new one was just budgeted out of, I
was
think
in
the
the
municipal,
CIP.
yeah, in the municipal parks, but it's not in there now.
okay.
So,
I thought we were gonna buy all mowers out of the special service district.
I don't think
No,
you can
because
all of them,
Just
because,
slope mower
Slope, but with the extra that you got there, you don't, well, whatever, okay.
for the levies.
Yeah.
For regular mowers to do, you can't take that out of special service.
They run all their mowers down there.
I know, but
slippery slope.
slippery slope, that's right. Do we,
Honestly, I'd like to see, is there any way we can say, all right, instead of doing a 12%, let's do a 7, 7, and a 7 to have a plan over 3 years, 5 years, however you want to spread it out, just to be somewhat responsible
But
to.
if you do that, maybe 7 won't cover it next year.
Well, that's what I'm saying, I don't know
You
what
know,
the number
I'd
is.
say you
but-
start with, I'd like to start with 10, hopefully get down a wee bit. But with an explanation of just what you've told us, people are gonna understand of what's gone on. They've seen things have changed. They've seen that, you know, we've had, like you said, the swimming pool, you know, and that didn't really get into accounting with them. We've had a bad year. We had the arena that wasn't open, but we're still paying everybody, I would assume. And you don't lose any income because you're giving it all to Blue Line Club, but they didn't have any games or nothing, so, you know, we didn't get paid that way.
right,
So I mean, there's things out there that, you know, that's gonna have to be adjusted. And I know a 10% or, that sounds like a rather large number, but on a $200,000 home, between 10% and 7% is $301 per year. You know,
Yeah,
and so,
but somebody on social security on a fixed income,
well,
that's a lot
not
of
many,
money.
No.
not many of us got $200,000 business.
Gotta start somewhere.
Or else if I got
Also-
that business, I better be making some money on
Well,
it.
that's my
Oh.
biggest concern is the business side of this, because that is a huge number, I mean,
well, and businesses
$200,000
are,
business, which every
ta-
building downtown is worth 200,000 on their tax base, I guarantee you that.
and businesses are taxed at a different rate. I mean, for a reason, businesses have the opportunity to earn income where, and so do we, but differently in a residence. Also, as a reminder, I also was on the Ward 4 tour. I've had lots of talks about housing. Not everyone that is struggling with income is also making a mortgage payment. So some of the burden of the taxes on property falls to the landlord, who is making an income on their rent. So there's some of those things to
Where does
consider
that
as
come
well.
from? The rent goes up.
All right, so
I don't have all the answers for you. I'm just giving you the real facts here and,
yeah,
But
I
it's gonna be
definitely-
tough one way or another, however you put it.
In my opinion, I would never, absolutely nothing over 10%, I mean, that to me is, we gotta get down there at least to be realistic and do our jobs properly.
I don't know, I think you go 777 over 3 years, it's like kicking the can down the road still.
Yep,
Well, at the end of the
yep.
day, where do you gouge now? What happens if all kinds of crap goes bad next year? A truck goes out,
Well,
this goes
but-
out,
and
now
that-
we're at 12% again.
therein lies the problem. And our facilities are aging, our equipment is aging. We take on older buildings. Pools are not cheap. You have a $13,000 water heater that does need to be replaced. That is in your budget here. We do have to plan for those things, and we've already had discussions at staff level of, I told them that we need to run lean the rest of the year. We're gonna try to finish as strong as we can. That doesn't mean giving up things that we need to do to properly do our jobs for the citizens. 7 is still
Well, that's why I
coming up
guess
with $200,000.
I look at all along too, now we keep talking about this RV park, and that's gonna be another money pit,
I don't see that bringing in,
any money. know,
probably
I mean-
not to exceed the expenses that will exist. And that's, so you're subsidizing, you're
Remember that
subsidizing.
it's maybe not to the city, but to the city. To every business in the city is gonna be seeing the income coming in from having folks camp here, canoe through here, you know, whatever they do going through here. Or you wanna just sit back down and wait till the well dries up and move along.
I don't-
I'd rather see something come in that's gonna bring us more than what we're hoping to bring.
Well, that's what
And
we're
I don't
hoping to
see
do
that
with,
hoping
what
to
you're
bring
hoping
us
to
a
do with
lot.
the bean crushing plant.
I do think, though, whenever you take on something, it is important to recognize the impact. The campground will likely have an impact on the levy. We are subsidizing the arena. We are subsidizing the pool. That's a reality. And we are gonna work really hard to close the gap and increase use and revenues and check that we're bringing in all of our lease payments. But I still think you will be subsidizing those.
But hopefully, I mean, that isn't the plan to bring, that brings those amenities, bring people into your community, which buy houses, pay taxes, you know, I mean, so it's one of those things, it's a liability, but at the end of the day, if you don't have those things, you're not getting the people to come to your community anyway, so. There's not a arena, I think there's 1 or 2 in the state of Minnesota that make any money, period. And
That's
we knew that
true.
when we built it, and it's one of those
And that's
things
true. I do believe you'll always subsidize it. I think we can do better with usage and income.
I'd like to still find out how the tax base only went up $90,000,
I-
and I'll find that out.
Okay, you let me know, but that was the official number.
I'd like to say something here. In order to move this discussion forward, I think we need to make a decision here. Either 10, 11, or 7, and let's move this thing along. You know, we're caught in this predicament, and this is the best I've seen us go through the budget since I've been on, only 2.5 years, but we are in deep doo-doo right now. And we gotta get out of it, and we sit here and talk about what if, let's get busy and do something. Set a 10 or 11 to start with, you can always take it back down, but if you know, I really think we need to move ahead here, and
So make that motion, Don.
I'll make that motion.
I just need a
What?
consensus, really.
Consensus,
Consensus, okay?
10
10.
10.
We're just setting the max. We're not,
max.
and we still have, we're gonna come back to you on the 20th. You won't officially vote or set anything until the 27th, so we'll have one more opportunity to see what we come up with. We'll show you reductions.
Like I say, set it at your 10, but let's shoot for 7.
I'd say 10, and Amy, will you please tell us what it would be reduced out of that budget?
I will, yes. I will.
We have to give you a chance to look at it and see what you do.
Okay.
Because that's gonna probably, if we keep anything or whatever, I mean, you wanna keep it, where do you want your reserves to go with that? I mean, are we gonna bring it all the way down? I mean, what is your plan for, whatever cuts you make? Say to get down, what's your plans for the reserve wise? I mean, do you got a cap on that? Do you just gonna take what we need and,
On what we plan to pull from reserves? What I had, well, some of them are water and wastewater, we're gonna have to, because the cost to operate is just the cost to operate until we raise rates. But on the levying funds, we tried to be reasonable. I think there's probably a little bit of wiggle room with the general fund, but I don't want that to be our practice.
slush fund?
Yeah, I mean, there is money there, and it's okay to use some of it, especially I feel more comfortable on some of the one-off things. And so that very well could be part of what we come back to you with. Parks and Rec, I have in at 385 right now to cover the match, our match for the bathhouse at the campground. We probably have a little wiggle room there as well. So we'll take a look at those things, but your airport's not set to pull and your library's not set to pull. So that's just general and,
That's right.
Parks and Rec.
Concern about that park is, you know, if the numbers come back at, you know, 6, 7, what do you do?
well,
You know,
we'll reject the bids and we'll go back to the grant administrator and,
But, you know, it's like, that was the whole thing, bad business, you can't do that, but it's like, at this point in time, like I said, to me right now, that app thing is, you know, it's like, if we can't get the retirement home thing or a freezer, we shouldn't be buying an app for,
They're looking at a walk-in commercial freezer over there
For
for
20
their,
grand.
for their restaurant.
my,
that's gonna help cash flow the thing, cause we have, you know, we
Well-
never gave them a dime either over the last increases for how many years?
no, but you're sending about 2% of your levy over.
But,
So
you know,
all
we're
of
not gonna
those
take care of
things.
our old elderly
No,
people that enjoy their meals, I mean.
I'm not suggesting that. My thought was to keep things in that benefit the whole community. Part of our strategic plan, was the timing of the app proposal ideal? No. Did I have a hand in that? No. I still thought it was important to put that before you because it is something, Steve, you yourself
Oh, absolutely.
have harped on the community calendar. And what I heard when I heard about it was things that met the needs that you had asked for, that some of you had asked for. I do think there's opportunity to share the cost of that with others.
I'm not saying that, so I'm just throwing that out there.
But
just
there
because
there
she
was
there, but-
strategic reasons. It wasn't because I like or dislike one over the other. I'm not sure that I could justify that 0.5% for a walk-in freezer that serves a small sector of the community when we send 2% levy and they ended the year with cash was justifiable. Park benches and trash receptacles and cement games downtown, I think are a wonderful idea. Do they serve the whole community in a budget like this? I didn't think so. So that was my justification, and I did it strategically, and I tried to be purposeful and thoughtful about those extra things.
I mean, I think you did a great job on it. Like I said, I knew from get-go, because I did in my house, in my head, and I think we both agreed that I was at 17 something, he was at 16 too. So to come back at
And
12 is pretty
I
good.
I knew at that point that that I was planning to propose some things from reserves that weren't showing in those budgets yet, but
But you had to be at 17% before you cut anything, or up. Like I said, we did it together, whatever, his number had my number, and they're within
Well,
1%, but.
we also saw, so the budgets that you saw this evening, we saw before you did, and so already brought those down. So that accounts for some of what you did.
How much did you say one levy brings now?
About 41,000, 1%.
I think before it used to be like 18,000, so it's went up quite a bit. You know.
Yeah. So, okay, so I just want to confirm, do we have consensus to aim and start at 10 and bring back next Monday to see what reductions that may have?
Yes.
Okay,
What time next Monday?
I believe it's 6 PM. That's all right?
I think so.
Can we shoot for 6?
Yeah.
Okay,
I think that's what the Ways and Means says.
me too. Okay. Thank you,
11 o'clock?
everyone.
Long day.